Chapter 1597. Along with the disappearance of the blood-colored cloud, the entire sky returns to its original calmness. Xiaota slowly descends. The green-gowned man opens his palm and Xiaota appears in his hand. Xiaota weakly says, "Master." The green-gowned man smiles, "Thank you for your hard work." With that he sends Xiaota in front of Zhou Xian. "It has accompanied me through countless hardships. Now let it accompany me." Zhou Xian keeps Xiaota and looks at the green-gowned man. "Has the seal been removed?" The green-gowned man shakes his head and smiles. "To remove it you must defeat me." Zhou Xian suddenly draws his sword and slashes. This sword is the strongest sword he has ever used, because he is now above the common sword. However, this terrifying sword is directly clamped by 2 fingers. The green-gowned man looks at Zhou Xian and smiles. "Sneak attack? That's my style." With that his 2 fingers lightly vibrate. Boom. Zhou Xian is directly shaken hundreds of feet away. The moment he stops, his body directly cracks. It should be said that his body did not recover at all. But fortunately his undying blood meridian is no longer suppressed. Under the recovery of the undying blood meridian, his body begins to recover at a very terrifying speed. After a while his body has returned to normal. The green-gowned man looks at Zhou Xian and slightly nods his head and smiles. This undying blood meridian is really good. It is indeed worthy to be ranked 3rd among the many blood meridians. Zhou Xian is a little surprised. 3rd? Isn't it 2nd? The green-gowned man shakes his head. It is only 3rd. Zhou Xian is a little confused. Then what blood meridian is ranked 1st? The green-gowned man smiles. Naturally it is our family's Mad Demon blood meridian. Mad Demon blood meridian. Zhou Xian blinks his eyes. 1st? The green-gowned man nods. Anyway, until now I have never seen a blood meridian more powerful than ours. Zhou Xian asked, "Then what's the 2nd-ranked bloodline?" The green-clothed man said softly, "It is a bloodline that is even more special than the undying bloodline. It is very strange. If there is a chance in the future I will see it." As he spoke he looked at Zhou Xian. "Continue." Zhou Xian nodded. He directly disappeared from where he was. In the distance the green-robed man used his finger as a sword and pointed forward. Boom. A wave of sword light shattered, and Zhou Xian retreated 10,000 zhang away along with his sword. Zhou Xian looked at the green-robed man. "I don't think I can beat him." The green-robed man shook his head. "You can't rely on your feelings. You have to try anything. If you don't try you'll never know if you can do it." Zhou Xian nodded. "All right." After saying that he suddenly disappeared. Sort of life and death. At this moment he was serious. In the distance the azure-robed man pointed a finger. Boom. Zhou Xian was sent flying again, but in the next moment he rushed out again. Each sword was stronger than the last. Although he was repelled every time, Zhou Xian became more and more excited as he fought. This was because he had just reached the mortal sword realm and wanted to have a good fight. He would treat it as practice. In an unknown star field, in the deepest part of this star field, there was an island floating. On the island there was a hall. Cosmos Divine Court. This was the headquarters of the Cosmos Divine Court. And this starfield was the Cosmos Divine Court starfield. In the Cosmos Divine Court's hall, there was only one person. It was the god official. The god official sat at the side, seemingly waiting for someone. After an unknown period of time, a woman walked into the hall. Wuku. After Wuku walked into the hall, he sat opposite the god official. Both of them, there was no reply. At this moment an old man walked into the hall. After entering the hall he glanced at the 2 people in the hall, then walked to the side and leaned against a pillar. He did not choose to sit. This was because the 2 seats closest to the front were occupied. Whether he sat on the left or the right he was inferior. Other than the laws of the universe and the God Master, who was qualified to sit above him. The undying old man. He was the person who had lived the longest in the Cosmos Divine Court. It was said that he had been bestowed a word by the laws of eternal life, so he had an extremely long lifespan. It could be said that the history of the Cosmos Divine Court was not as long as his. No one knew how strong he was, but one could imagine the strength of a person who could live for so long. At this moment 2 people walked in. It was a man and a woman. The man was wearing a black robe and held a sword, while the woman was wearing a black robe and held a blade. After the 2 walked into the hall they glanced at the god official and Wuku. They did not sit but walked to another pillar and stood. Yin Yang Saint Envoy. The two had reached the mortal realm hundreds of thousands of years ago, which was the breaking mortal realm. Now they were even more unfathomable. In the Cosmos Divine Court, one was number one in the Blade Dao while the other was number one in the Sword Dao. At this moment another old man walked in. The old man was wearing a black robe, his entire body exuded an eerie aura, and his hands were as thin as bones. Undead God Monarch. He was in charge of the undead in a star field, and he had the most subordinates in the Cosmos Divine Court. Actually, the Dead Souls star field was almost destroyed by the Cosmos Divine Court back then, because the undead under the Undead God Monarch were too many. Anyone killed by the Undead God Monarch, no matter how strong, would become an undead and be restricted by him. Therefore the Dead Souls star field was very terrifying back then, and it even wanted to destroy the Cosmos Divine Court. However, the laws of the universe appeared and conquered the Dead Souls star field. No one knew which universal law appeared, but they knew that the Dead Souls star field was now under the control of the Cosmos Divine Court. At this moment, everyone in the hall frowned at the same time, and they all looked towards a corner in the distance. There was a little girl squatting there. The little girl looked like she was only 15 or 16 years old, and her hair was a little long. Her hair covered half of her face, so only the left side of her face could be seen. Her chin was resting on her knees, and in her hands was a little wooden doll that looked exactly like her. When they saw the little girl, the expressions of all the experts in the hall changed subtly. Even Wu Ku and the god official had a hint of caution in their eyes. This little girl was the most terrifying assassin in the history of the Cosmos Divine Court. The god of assassins. She didn't have a name, or rather no one knew what her name was. And she was the second oldest person in the Cosmos Divine Court. The little girl was very special. In the Cosmos Divine Court, even the God Masters wouldn't forcefully control her. Other than her terrifying assassination ability, there was another reason, and that was that this little girl was adopted by the first God Master of the Cosmos Divine Court. Adopted by the founder of the Cosmos Divine Court. However, for some unknown reason she always looked like a little girl and her mind had always been that of a little girl. No one knew and no one dared to ask. Even the undying old man who had lived the longest was extremely afraid of this little girl and never provoked her. This was because once she assassinated someone, it was simply too terrifying. Unfortunately, the Cosmos Divine Court couldn't order her directly. Otherwise, with her terrifying assassination ability, the people on the Cosmos Divine Court's wanted list would have been long dead. No one expected that this little girl would actually come. At this moment another person walked into the hall. It was a lady in a white robe. Master Yen. The only legendary master speech of the Cosmos Divine Court, Yen Xiaoxiao. She was the one who built the transfer arrays between the various starfields, and she only had this ability. Only she had this ability. And she wasn't just a legendary master speech, she was also a legendary array master, legendary rune master, legendary blacksmith, legendary pill master. She was omnipotent. In the Cosmos Divine Court she was the most popular. After Yen Xiaoxiao entered the hall, everyone in the hall nodded towards her. Facing everyone's greetings, Yen Xiaoxiao nodded slightly as a response. Then she sat beside Wu Ku, picked up a thick ancient book and started reading. At this moment two ladies walked into the hall. The guardians of the universe, Ma Yi and Mu Xiaodao. Seeing Mu Xiaodao, everyone in the hall instantly felt a headache. In terms of strength, Mu Xiaodao wasn't as strong as some of the people in the hall. However, everyone in the hall, including the God Master of the Cosmos Divine Court, didn't dare to underestimate her. This was because she was the guardian of the universe. She was personally chosen by the laws of the universe. Moreover, the guardians of the universe had an ultimate life-saving method, which was to borrow the power of the laws of the universe. It could be said that if they went all out, they would be able to fight against anyone here. Of course, no one was willing to fight against them. They were equivalent to the representatives of the laws of the universe. Wouldn't fighting against them be going against the laws of the universe? Mu Xiaodao glanced at everyone in the hall and smiled. Hello everyone. No one responded. Mu Xiaodao walked in front of the god official. The god official hesitated for a moment before standing up. Miss Mu, sit. As he spoke he walked to the side. He didn't want to offend this woman. This woman was too terrifying when she was reckless. Mu Xiaodao didn't stand on ceremony and sat down. She glanced at everyone and said, I just returned from the devil domain. I can tell you a piece of news. That Yi Xian's cultivation has been sealed. The god official nodded. His cultivation has indeed been sealed. However, he isn't worthy of so many of us targeting him. We gathered here today for another purpose. Mu Xiaodao shook her head. That fellow isn't simple. I feel that if you really want to deal with him, it's best that everyone goes to the devil domain now and deal with him together. He will definitely die. Everyone in the hall shook their heads. Even though Yi Xian possessed the constitution of disaster, he was only ranked 36th on the wanted list, so he wasn't worthy of them making a move against him. Mu Xiaodao shook her head and sighed. We're giving him a chance. The god official said, the reason we gathered here today is to deal with the Nether Pavilion and the great demon king Mo Xiaoshuang. Mu Xiaodao spoke indifferently. I suggest we kill Yi Xian first. Wu Ke glanced at Mu Xiaodao and remained silent. On the other side, the undying old man suddenly said, Miss Mu, do you think that Yi Xian poses a greater threat than the Nether Pavilion and the great demon king Mo Xiaoshuang? Mu Xiaodao nodded. I think so. The undying old man shook his head with a smile and remained silent. Everyone in the hall remained silent as well. Meanwhile, the god official spoke abruptly. Miss Mu is right. We really can't allow Yi Xian to grow. When I saw Yi Xian, his cultivation was sealed and his body was at the Unity Realm. As he spoke, he glanced at the hall. Who's willing to deal with him? No one in the hall responded. A Unity Realm wasn't worthy of them taking action. At this moment, the undying old man suddenly said, I feel that everyone in the hall isn't suitable. Kill a Unity Realm? Won't we be laughed at by others? Let the younger generation of the Divine Palace do it. We can also train them. In any case, Yi Xian is in the Devil Domain, and the Undying Emperor clan can't help him. Without a backer, he's just an ant. Hearing this, everyone in the hall nodded in agreement. At the side, Mu Xiaodao lay on a chair and shook her head. I want to change teammates. At this moment, she wanted to rely on Yi Xian. Chapter 1598. At this moment, Mu Xiaodao felt very helpless. She was very clear about Yi Xian's natural talent, and his speed of improvement could only be described as terrifying. Most importantly, this guy had 3 extremely terrifying backers behind him. The Cosmos Court didn't know much about the 3 swordsmen, but she didn't. She had dealt with 2 of the swordsmen, and she knew how terrifying those 2 swordsmen were. Even though those 2 swordsmen were restrained by the laws of the universe, she wasn't sure if the laws of the universe could restrain them. Suddenly, Yan Xiaoxiao spoke. You should listen to Miss Mu's opinion. Everyone looked at Yan Xiaoxiao, and Yan Xiaoxiao glanced at them. We lost the battle against the Undying Emperor clan. The undying old man shook his head. He didn't kill them. It was that azure-clothed man. Mu Xiaodao smiled. And here I thought I didn't know about him. As she spoke, she suddenly frowned. Do you know anything about him? No one in the hall spoke. Obviously they didn't. They really hadn't come into contact with him. Meanwhile, the undying old man suddenly said, Miss Mu, is that swordsman very strong? Ma Yi gazed coldly at the undying old man. His clone almost killed the 7th swordsman. Isn't that strong? The undying old man frowned slightly when he heard that. The expressions of everyone here had changed slightly as well. A clone almost killed the 7th swordsman? That was quite terrifying. Meanwhile, a voice resounded from outside. Everyone should pay attention to Yi Xian and that azure-clothed man. A woman walked in as the voice resounded. She had a ponytail, wore a light green dress and held a scroll in her hand. She was an educated youth. She was in charge of all the information systems in the Cosmos Court. She could be said to be the all-knowing scholar of the Cosmos Court. No, she was the all-knowing scholar of the entire universe. She glanced at everyone and smiled. Miss Mu hasn't explained everything. Firstly, that azure-clothed man isn't strong, he's extremely strong. It can be said that no one in our hall is a match for him. As she spoke, she looked at the divine official. Sir Divine Official, I was injured by a strand of sword energy. It was left behind by that azure-robed man, and it was left behind tens of thousands of years ago. Hearing this, the Grand Priest's face instantly became solemn. That wisp of sword energy had almost killed him. The undying old man looked at the youth and frowned. Is it that terrifying? The educated youth looked at the undying old man. Are you questioning me? The undying old man was about to speak when the divine official suddenly said, If that strand of sword chi really belongs to him, then his strength is absolutely not something we can contend against. The educated youth nodded. Besides this green-robed man, there is also a woman in a plain dress. The strength of these two people was extremely terrifying. Fortunately, both of them are restrained by the laws of the universe. The law of the universe. The expressions of everyone here instantly became solemn when they heard this. To be able to force the laws of the universe to come out and restrain him, that was not an ordinary kind of terror. Ji Qing continued, I can understand that your target is the Nether Hall and Heaven's Sanctum, but don't forget that Yi Xian has the disaster physique. He is the one that the laws of the universe want to eliminate the most. The Grand Priest nodded, I know. However, the great demon king of the Heaven's Sanctum has summoned all the experts of the Heaven's Sanctum and declared war against us. We have no choice but to deal with it. Otherwise it will be very troublesome. The Heaven's Sanctum. The educated youth fell silent for a moment before he said, We can't underestimate the Heaven's Sanctum. According to my investigations, the Great Demon King has summoned the 6 Great Demon Kings and 12 Demon Generals. That woman wants to take advantage of the absence of the laws of the universe to fight us. And that Nether Hall. If they have the chance, they will definitely act as well. The Grand Priest nodded. It's not that we don't take Yi Xian seriously, but we have to deal with the Heaven's Sanctum and Nether Hall first. Of course, as Miss Mu said, we can't underestimate Yi Xian. As he spoke, he glanced at the hall. Who will deal with Yi Xian? Right at this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared in the main hall. The hall instantly fell silent when they saw this figure. A divine lord. But it wasn't his main body that had come. The divine lord opened his palm and a command token floated out slowly. The command token floated to the nameless little girl who was hiding in the corner. The little girl raised her head and glanced at the command token. After a while she picked it up and stood up. The divine lord said, Yi Xian. The little girl clenched her right hand lightly and the command token vanished. She turned to look at the educated youth, and the latter took out a scroll and placed it before the little girl. All the information about him. The little girl picked up the scroll and turned around to leave. Not far away, Wuxia's face darkened when he saw that. She wasn't afraid of anyone in the hall who went to the devil territory, but she was most afraid of this little girl because she was the most dangerous existence in the hall. Even the Divine Lord wasn't as dangerous as her. She was an extremely terrifying assassin. How terrifying was she? It could be said that she wasn't confident that she could survive if the little girl came to kill her. If it was an open battle, then she wasn't afraid of anyone in the hall, including the Divine Lord and the little girl. But the problem was that the little girl was an assassin. Wuxia's eyes were filled with worry. Meanwhile, the Divine Lord suddenly said, Leave Yi Xian to her. Let's discuss how to destroy the Heaven Estate and Nether Pavilion. Mu Xiaodao didn't stay in the hall and she hurriedly followed the little girl out. But when she stepped out of the hall, the nameless little girl had vanished. Mu Xiaodao's face fell when she witnessed this scene. She hadn't expected that the Divine Lord would actually be able to make the little girl fight. After all, besides the laws of the universe, no one could make the little girl fight. Even the laws of the universe might not be able to. The little girl was extremely strange. Meanwhile, Ma Yi followed her out. Ma Yi suddenly said, Are you worried about him? Mu Xiaodao smiled. Just say what you want to say. Don't be so sarcastic. Ma Yi gazed at Mu Xiaodao. You don't want him to die, right? Mu Xiaodao nodded. Ma Yi stared fixedly at Mu Xiaodao. Xiaodao, your thoughts are very dangerous. Mu Xiaodao chuckled lightly. Ma Yi, let's discuss something we've already discussed. Do people with calamity constitutions really deserve to die? Ma Yi was about to speak when Mu Xiaodao continued. He just wants to live. Everyone has the right to live, isn't that right? Ma Yi shook her head. But we are the guardians of the universe. We should protect the laws of the universe. Mu Xiaodao suddenly asked, What if the laws of the universe are wrong? Hearing this, Ma Yi's face instantly changed. She turned to look at Mu Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao smiled. I was just casually saying. As she spoke, she looked towards the horizon. From my standpoint, he does deserve to die because I am the guardian of the universe. But from my personal perspective, I don't think he's wrong. He just wants to live. The laws of the universe should be targeting that mysterious person, not him, Yi Xian. Moreover, there are many suspicious points. For example, why does the mysterious person in his body want to go against the laws? Why does the laws of the universe still target him despite knowing that he has 3 super experts behind him? As she spoke, her eyes narrowed. The biggest suspicious point is the identity of the mysterious person. In the entire Cosmos God Court, other than the laws of the universe, no one knows the identity of the mysterious person, including the educated youth. Ma Yi said in a deep voice, Xiaodao, I know this, but you have to be clear about your own identity. Mu Xiaodao smiled, I know. Are you afraid that my life will be in danger? Ma Yi nodded, he's my best friend. I don't want anything to happen to him. Mu Xiaodao smiled, don't worry, I'm very smart. I won't be as stupid as Xiao Heir courting death for a man. Ma Yi looked at Mu Xiaodao wanting to say something but hesitating. Mu Xiaodao blinked, don't tell me you think that I like him? Ma Yi nodded vigorously. Mu Xiaodao laughed, what a joke. Ma Yi, I suggest you watch more palace intrigues. The women in there can have many wives. Hee hee. Ma Yi. Mu Xiaodao didn't say anything else and walked away. Ma Yi suddenly said, Xiaodao, don't be reckless. Mu Xiaodao waved her hand, don't worry, I won't investigate. Ma Yi looked at Mu Xiaodao with a trace of worry in her eyes. Actually, she understood Mu Xiaodao better. Don't be fooled by this guy's carefree attitude as if he didn't care about anything. Once he cared about something, he would be crazier than anyone else. What she was most worried about was that Mu Xiaodao was interested in Xian, because if that was really the case, Mu Xiaodao would do anything. Thinking of this, Ma Yi suddenly shook her head, damn that man. The next time I see that Xian, I'm going to kill him. At this time, Yan Xiaoxiao also walked out of the main hall. She quickly walked into the distance, but before long, a woman appeared in front of her. Mu Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao looked at Yan Xiaoxiao and smiled. Miss Yan, do you have those talismans that can transmit sound from afar? Yan Xiaoxiao nodded, yes. Mu Xiaodao blinked, can you give me 2? Yan Xiaoxiao took out 2 transparent talismans and handed them to Mu Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao glanced at Yan Xiaoxiao. Aren't you going to ask me what I'm going to do with them? Yan Xiaoxiao Xiaodao, inform Xian. After saying that, she hugged her thick book and walked into the distance. On the spot, Mu Xiaodao was stunned. At this time, Yan Xiaoxiao suddenly stopped and said, whether it's good or evil doesn't depend on one's physique. Miss Mu, the truth often means death. Take care. After saying that, she quickly disappeared into the distance. Mu Xiaodao looked at the sound transmission talisman in her hand. After a while, she crushed one and said softly, bitch, call big brother or father. Otherwise, you're going to die. Her voice disappeared along with the sound transmission talisman. In the infernal domain, Xian flew out again. This time he flew almost 1,000 feet away. In the distance, the man in green said with a smile, continue. Xian climbed up from the ground. He glanced at the man in green and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Father, can you go easy on me? Hearing this, the man in green was stunned. The next moment he laughed out loud. Yes. Absolutely. Let's go, father will show you off. After saying that, he suddenly appeared by Xian's side, and then he took Xian with him and vanished. Xian was speechless. P.S. Brothers, I've been working hard to save up manuscripts. I want to do something big. Chapter 1599. In the sky, the man in green was flying on his sword with Xian. The man in green was full of smiles. It was obvious that he was very happy. In fact, he felt guilty towards Xian because he had never accompanied Xian since he was young. However, he had no other choice. If Xian kept following him, although he would be safe, he would be crippled. Comfort could destroy a person. Although Xian was not very strong now, he had a good temperament. He was courageous and ruthless. Xian glanced at the green-robed man and felt rather complicated. In fact, he was really unfamiliar with his parents, because no matter if it was his father or mother, neither of them had ever accompanied him. Hate. Of course he hated them. However, after knowing that the man in green was helping him find the source of the mysterious man, he did not hate him so much anymore. Of course, the main reason was that his sister Yiling was alive and well. Otherwise, he would not forgive anyone. At this moment, the man in green stopped. Xian looked in front of him, but there was nothing there. The man in green drew a line with his fingers. The space in front of them cracked open, and within the cracked space was a world of its own. The green-robed man led Xian in. What entered their eyes was an endless mountain range. They could not see the end of it. Xian was curious. Where is this? The man in green smiled. The Earth Spirit Clan. A clan that lives underground. Back then they were in danger of being exterminated. I happened to pass by and saved them. Let's go. After saying that, he led Xian into the vast mountains. Then they came to a huge cave. As soon as they arrived at the cave, an old man appeared in front of them. The old man was a little short and had a goatee. The old man was very cautious. However, when he saw the man in green, his expression changed drastically and he said with a trembling voice, "Guardian." The man in green laughed. "Is Xianxia still here?" The old man knelt down. "Guardian." As he spoke, he kept kowtowing. The green-robed man shook his head and smiled. He gently lifted his right hand and helped the old man up. The azure-robed man smiled and said, "Let's go in." The old man quickly said, No. Guardian, please wait a moment." With that, he turned around and disappeared into the distance. The green-shirt man looked at Xian and said with a smile, "The Earth Spirit Tribe is a special tribe. They aren't very strong, but their forging skills are top-notch. Can be said that their forging skills are the best in the entire universe. It was also because of this that they were coveted by many powerful forces and were almost exterminated." Xian was just about to speak when a group of people suddenly ran over, and the person in the lead was a white-haired old man. The white-haired old man was first stunned when he saw the green-clothed man, and then he charged over to the green-clothed man. He intended to embrace the green-clothed man, but he noticed that the green-clothed man was only a clone. The green-robed man smiled and said, "Xianxia, how have you been?" Xianxia laughed and said, "Brother Yang, I've missed you so much." As he spoke, he looked at Xian and asked, "This is?" The green-robed man smiled and said, "Hi, son." Xian quickly bowed and said, "Hello, Uncle Xianxia." Since the green-robed man was his father's brother, he had to call him uncle. Xianxia was stunned when he heard Xian call him uncle. Then he laughed and said, "So it's my nephew. Good. Very good. Come, let's go in and talk." The green-robed man shook his head and said, "This sword chi is about to disappear." Xianxia looked at the green-robed man and sighed, "You brat, you didn't even come in person." The green-robed man smiled and said, "There will be a chance in the future." Xianxia nodded and said, "You must have something to tell me." The green-robed man pointed at Xian and said, "Take care of him." Xianxia looked at Xian and said, "It's no big deal." The green-robed man smiled and said, "Thank you." Xianxia was a little unhappy and said, "Why are you saying this to my brother?" The green-robed man laughed and said, "Xianxia, don't forge iron every day. If you have the time, you should cultivate more. Don't let me see you when you become a pile of dirt." As he spoke, he gradually became illusory. Xian quickly said, "Father, do you have anything for me?" The green-robed man looked at Xian and smiled and said, "Above the mortal state is the breaking mortal state. Do you know what's above the breaking mortal state?" Xian shook his head and said, "I don't know." The green-robed man smiled and asked, "Do you want to break through to the breaking mortal state immediately?" Xian was overjoyed and quickly said, "Of course I want to. Even in my dreams." The green-robed man blinked and said, "Dream on then. You can have everything in your dreams." As soon as he finished, he disappeared. Xian was speechless. At the side, Xianxia heard the conversation between Xian and his son and could not help but laugh. Xian was speechless. How dare his father play tricks on him? At this moment, Xianxia suddenly pulled Xian's arm and said, "Nephew, let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, he led Xian into the cave. The rest of the Earth Spirit Clan members quickly backed away. After entering the cave, Xian discovered that there was a huge city underground. This city shocked Xian. The entire city was almost 300 meters tall and the city walls were made of a dark golden metal. There was not a single crack in the city. It was as if it was made by nature. Along the way, countless Earth Spirit Clan members watched. As they entered the city, Xianxia suddenly shouted, "Open the Earth Spirit's treasury." The Earth Spirit's treasury. Hearing this, the countless Earth Spirit Clan members suddenly became excited. The Earth Spirit's treasury. This was the forbidden area of the Earth Spirit Clan. Only the leader of the clan could enter because all the best treasures of the Earth Spirit Clan were gathered there. The highest level of blacksmiths were legendary blacksmiths, and only the most perfect works of legendary blacksmiths could be placed within the treasury. The most perfect. Not even the slightest flaw was qualified to be placed within the treasury. Even if it was the work of a legendary blacksmith, it was still not qualified. Only the work of a legendary blacksmith was qualified to be placed within the treasury. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to forge such a perfect treasure. Even a legendary blacksmith would need at least a few hundred or even 1,000 years to forge such a perfect treasure. Even though Zhou Xian didn't know where the treasury was, based on the attitude of the Earth Spirit clan members around him, he knew that he might be rich this time. I must calm down. I must be reserved. What treasures have I not seen? In next to no time, Xianxia led Zhou Xian to an enormous crystal pavilion. 2 black-robed elders stood in front of the crystal pavilion. They were the guardians of the treasury. They were also the strongest members of the Earth Spirit clan. Zhou Xian glanced at the 2 of them. He couldn't sense their auras, but he could sense a trace of danger from them. This shocked Zhou Xian. He was at the breaking mortality realm now, and there were very few things that could make him feel danger. At this moment, the old man on the left suddenly said, "Xianxia, is that really the aura of the guardian?" Xianxia laughed and said, "Elderswa, you're right. It's the guardian." Elderswa said softly, "Unfortunately, it's just a clone." Xianxia smiled and said, "Zhou Changlong, this is Brother Yang's son." Zhou Xian hurriedly bowed to them respectfully. "Greetings, elders." Elderswa glanced at Zhou Xian and said, "They have the same bloodline. Little fellow, you don't have to be so courteous." Zhou Qiu smiled and said, "Elderswa, I want to bring this little fellow in to pick a few things." Elderswa nodded. "Of course." At this moment, Elderswa, who had been silent, suddenly said, "3. P3." As soon as these words were spoken, the other members of the Earth Spirit clan instantly gasped. 3 pieces. After all, even the patriarch of the Earth Spirit clan only had the qualifications to enter once every 1,000 years, and he could only choose a single treasure. But this human could choose 3 as soon as he arrived. Of course, no one felt jealous or displeased, because he was the son of the guardian. Meanwhile, Elderswa suddenly said, 3? That's too stingy. Little fellow, you can choose 10 once you enter. 10. Countless members of the Earth Spirit clan were stunned. Zhou Qiu was quite surprised as well. 10. That wasn't a small number. Because every single treasure within the guardian was truly priceless. Elderswa glanced at Elderswa but didn't say anything. Elderswa smiled, "Go on in." Xianxia nodded and was about to lead Zhou Xian in. Meanwhile, a clear and melodious voice resounded from behind, "Father, I want to go in as well." Zhou Xian turned around and saw a woman around the age of 17 or 18. She was extremely beautiful and there was a small hammer hanging from her waist. Xianxia frowned slightly. "You can't go in." The woman spoke in a slightly aggrieved tone. "I just want to go in and have a look at the masterpieces. I don't want the treasures within." Xianxia sighed softly. "Little girl, you can't go in." "Wait." Zhou Xian suddenly said, "Let her go in with us." Xianxia gazed at Zhou Xian and Zhou Xian gazed at the 2 elders. "Can I?" Elderswa grinned. "Yes." Of course he had to give them face. Zhou Xian bowed slightly. "Thank you." The woman walked over to Zhou Xian and chuckled. "Thank you, big brother." Zhou Xian smiled. "I'm Zhou Xian. What about you?" The woman smiled. "Shanling." Zhou Xian smiled. "Younger sister Shanling. Let's go in." As he spoke, he and Shanling walked towards a place not far away. Xianxia glanced at Zhou Xian and a trace of gratitude flashed in his eyes. Soon he followed. After a few people entered, Elder Yu suddenly said, 10. Elderswa said, "If it wasn't for his father, the Earth Spirit tribe would have been gone." Elderswa was silent. Elderswa continued, "This little guy has already reached the breaking mortal realm." Elderswa nodded and did not say anything else. As he understood, the father was the guardian of the Earth Spirit tribe and the son was a genius. He could also become the guardian of the Earth Spirit tribe. After entering the Earth Spirit treasure vault, Zhou Xian seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked, "Uncle, I've seen a worn-out ancient shield before. That ancient shield can reflect all attacks. Does that ancient shield belong to the Earth Spirit treasure vault?" Xianxia smiled. "You should be talking about the sorcerer armor shield. That treasure was forged by the Earth Spirit tribe, but it's not from the Earth Spirit treasure vault because it's a defective item and is not qualified to enter the Earth Spirit treasure vault. When we asked your father to choose a treasure, he didn't want anything. In the end we couldn't accept it, so he randomly picked a broken shield from the outside and said that it was for a certain little guy to play with. We were all very embarrassed because that sorcerer armor shield was too trashy. Defective item. Not qualified to enter the Earth Spirit Treasure Vault. Too trashy. Yi Xian suddenly felt like he was floating. PZW. Chapter 1600. Needless to say, Yi Xian was extremely shocked. He was very clear about the terror of that dilapidated ancient shield. That shield could even reflect Mu Xiaodao's flying daggers. With that shield he could practically take on 3 guardians of the universe at once. However, that shield was trash in Xianxia's eyes. Yi Xian was looking forward to the land spirit's treasury. Soon the 3 of them entered the treasury. What entered his eyes were more than 100 red pillars of light, and within each pillar of light was a treasure of various types. Yi Xian walked to the nearest light pillar. Inside the light pillar was a black round shield. The round shield was as smooth as a mirror and there were many strange runes on its surface. Yi Xian was curious. Uncle Xianxia, this is? Xianxia smiled. This is the God Trembling Shield. It's a perfect inferior legendary grade. Yi Xian asked, is it powerful? Xianxia shook his head. Not especially powerful. Its core function is to reflect damage. It can reflect twice the damage. Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he said, twice. Xianxia nodded. For example, if you slash it with your sword, it can reflect twice the power of your sword. Yi Xian gulped. Uncle, isn't this powerful? Xianxia smiled. It's just Esosa. Let's go to the next level. As he spoke, he pulled Yi Xian to the next level. Yi Xian looked at the God Trembling Shield reluctantly. Actually, he really wanted to take it with him. Shan Ling suddenly covered his mouth and laughed. Brother Yi, there's even better stuff behind. Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. He was a little inexperienced. Soon the 3 of them arrived at the next level. When they entered the next level, Yi Xian saw more than 60 purple light pillars. It was almost half of the previous level. Yi Xian walked to another light pillar. At this moment, Xianxia suddenly pulled him. Don't look at this. Come look here. Yi Xian was speechless. The hill brought Yi Xian to one of the light pillars. Inside the light pillar was a black mirror with a dark gold frame. On top of the mirror there was a strange red rune. Yi Xian looked at Xianxia. Xianxia smiled and said, this is the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth. Yi Xian quickly asked, what's the use? Xianxia laughed. This item is extremely useful. Can be duplicated. Yi Xian was puzzled. Copy. Hill nodded. Once this item is activated, it can duplicate an opponent's doppelganger. This doppelganger will have at least 70% of the opponent's combat power. As he spoke, he paused for a moment and said, of course, an expert at the level of your father can't be replicated. Yi Xian said softly, only 70%? Actually, he was a little disappointed because if it only had 70% of its power, it would be worse than the shield from before. At this moment, Xianxia smiled and said, if it's just a copy, it definitely doesn't have the right to be placed here. Yi Xian quickly asked, what other uses does it have? Xianxia smiled and said, it can make 10 copies. Moreover, it can also duplicate itself. 10. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression changed. If it was only 1, it would be useless. But if it was 10, it would be completely different. 10. 10 of him against 1 Mu Xiaodao. Just thinking about it was exciting. If the opponent was stronger than him, it would be equivalent to having 10 more super experts. Xianxia smiled and said, are you tempted? Yi Xian nodded vigorously. 10. That was a little too ridiculous. Xianxia laughed and then silently chanted a spell. Soon, the purple light pillar suddenly split open and the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth floated out. Xianxia smiled and said, drip a drop of blood. Yi Xian nodded and said, all right. As he spoke, he bent his finger and a drop of blood entered the mirror. The mysterious mirror of heaven and earth trembled slightly and directly shot a ray of light into the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom! Yi Xian's entire body trembled. The next moment, the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth turned into a ray of white light and entered the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Then a small mark of the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth appeared between Yi Xian's eyebrows but quickly disappeared. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. At this moment he could feel the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth. Yi Xian opened his palm and the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth appeared in his hand. The next moment suddenly 10 Yixians appeared beside him. 10 clones. Yixian looked at Xianxia and said, "Their combat strength?" Xianxia smiled and said, "They can perfectly duplicate your combat consciousness." Yixian suddenly slashed his sword towards the right and the clone on the right disappeared. When it appeared again it was already several feet away. The next moment, a sword suddenly appeared half an inch in front of his eyebrows. Sword of life and death. However, before the sword could come into contact with his eyebrows, it was caught by 2 fingers. The next moment, a ray of sword light suddenly slashed straight down from the top of his head. Sword drawing technique. Yixian was a little shocked. This clone actually knew his sword technique. Moreover, this clone's sword principle was actually at the breaking mortality stage. Of course, there was a difference. It should be said that it was a fake breaking mortality stage. Yixian moved his mind and the clone that was attacking immediately stopped. Then it retreated to the side and stood respectfully. Beside him Xianxia smiled and said, "How is it?" Yixian said in a low voice, "Uncle, other than powerhouses at my father's level, can this mysterious mirror of heaven and earth be duplicated by other powerhouses?" Xianxia shook his head and said, "It's not that exaggerated. Some special powerhouses can't be duplicated. It can be said that the limit of what it can duplicate is powerhouses above the breaking mortality stage. Moreover, the clone that duplicates powerhouses above the breaking mortality stage can only have about 60% of their combat strength." Yixian nodded slightly. If it could even duplicate powerhouses of the breaking mortality stage, it would be too crazy. However, to be able to duplicate powerhouses above the breaking mortality stage, one had to admit that it was quite amazing. Although it could only have 60% of their combat strength, there were still 10 of them. It was a godly tool for group fights. Xianxia said again, "Do you know why this godly item is called the perfect legendary godly item?" Yixian shook his head. Xianxia smiled and said, "Because even if the clone that is created by this item dies, it can't cause any harm to your original body. In order to achieve this, the legendary blacksmith that created this item spent hundreds of years researching it." Yixian said softly, "Impressive." Xianxia nodded. "My clan has a unique advantage in terms of smithing. Moreover, everyone is very interested in smithing. However, my clan has no interest in cultivation. Therefore my clan's combat strength is a little weak. If it wasn't for your father, even if my clan wasn't exterminated, I would have to submit to others and become their slaves." Yixian was a little curious. "Uncle, which force did you guys back then?" Xianxia shook his head and said, "There were all kinds of forces. Among them there was the shadow of the Cosmos Palace. They were rather tactful. They said that they wanted us to join the Cosmos Palace and that they could protect us. However, we have to hand over 70% of the godly items that we forge every year." Hand over 70%. Yixian fell silent. He had to admit that their appetite was quite big. Xianxia continued, "The one that almost exterminated my Earth Spirit clan was the Beast Demon clan. They wanted to exterminate us back then because they wanted to obtain a super godly armor from my Earth Spirit clan, the Invincible God of War armor." Yixian was a little curious. Invincible God of War armor? Xianxia nodded. It was a super godly item that was forged by 9 legendary blacksmiths. It could be said to be the most perfect armor in the history of my Earth Spirit clan. Not only was it forged by 9 legendary blacksmiths, it was also forged with countless precious materials from my Earth Spirit clan. It could be said that this is a piece of armor that my Earth Spirit clan forged with all their might. It is also the pride of my Earth Spirit clan. Yixian blinked his eyes. "Can I take a look?" Xianxia hesitated for a while and said, "This? You can definitely take a look, but," Yixian said seriously, "I'm not taking it. I'll just take a look." Xianxia smiled. "All right. I'll bring you to take a look later. Come, there's a treasure here that's not bad. It's suitable for you." After that he brought Yixian to the other side. Along the way Yixian kept looking at the light pillars. To be honest, he wanted all of them. However, he couldn't be like that. At this moment Yixian suddenly stopped. He looked at one of the light pillars. Within the purple light pillar, there was a golden dragon seal. Dragon seal? Yixian was a little curious. "Uncle, this is?" Xianxia smiled. "This is the heavenly dragon seal. Contains the chi of the mountains and rivers. With this seal, not only will you be protected by the heavenly dragon, you can also use this seal to strengthen your own dragon energy. Although it's not bad, it's not suitable for you. This is because this seal can only be used to its best effect on an emperor. In other words, if an emperor has this seal, not only will his cultivation be much easier, he can also control this seal to gather the power of a country. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Uncle, I want this." Xianxia was a little surprised. "Nephew, this seal is not suitable for you." Yi Xian smiled. "I have a wife who happens to be an emperor. She's very suitable." Xianxia smiled. "All right." As he spoke, he silently recited an incantation. The beam of light directly shattered, and the heavenly dragon seal within it directly flew to Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and kept the heavenly dragon seal. Xianxia smiled. "Nephew, your sword principle is at the broken mortality realm, right?" Yi Xian nodded and smiled. "Yes." Xianxia smiled. "Then you like this treasure very much. It's suitable for you." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What is it?" Xianxia laughed. "You'll see it soon." As he spoke, he brought Yi Xian to a place not far away. Yi Xian was still looking around. He had to admit that the treasures here were too terrifying. At this moment he finally understood why the Earth Spirit clan was coveted by others. The treasures of this clan were not ordinary terrifying. If any force obtained the treasures of the Earth Spirit clan, their strength would increase by at least a few times. At this moment Xianxia stopped. He pointed at a light pillar in the distance and smiled. "This is it." Yi Xian looked at the light pillar. When he saw the treasure in the light pillar, his eyes instantly lit up. Chapter 1601. Within the purple pillar of light was a sword box. The sword box was dark gold in color. There was a golden talisman drawn on the front. The back of the sword box was painted with a small black sword. There was a drop of blood on the tip of the small black sword. Yi Xian asked curiously, "Uncle, what is this?" Xianxia smiled. "Burial sword box." Yi Xian blinked. "Burial sword box?" Xianxia nodded. "This sword box contains the murderous aura, anger, resentment, evil aura, and death aura of hundreds of millions of ferocious spirits. Once this thing is used, it will become a purgatory of hell on earth." Speaking up to this point, he looked at Yi Xian. "If it weren't for the fact that you have already reached the breaking mortal realm and that your bloodline itself is the main culprit, I would never recommend this item to you." Shanling suddenly said, "Brother Yi is very suitable for this item." Xianxia nodded. "Your swordsmanship is extraordinary. Moreover, your bloodline is the main murderous aura and you have killed many people. This item is the most suitable for you. However, you must be careful. The murderous aura is not simple." Yi Xian was curious. "Uncle, how did the elder forge this sword box? Did he really kill millions of living beings?" Xianxia shook his head and smiled. "Of course not. In order to collect the murderous aura, the elder spent hundreds of years." Yi Xian was shocked. "Hundreds of years?" Hill nodded. "Every legendary level god item is extremely difficult to forge, especially those perfect level legendary god items." Yi Xian said softly, "This is the blood of the Earth Spirit clan." Xianxia smiled. "Yes." He then looked at the pillar of light. "Try this item." He then chanted an incantation. Soon, the pillar of light disappeared and the burial sword box appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and asked, "Uncle, was the elder who forged this item a swordsman?" Xianxia shook his head. "No. However, he loved swords and spent his entire life studying them. There are still 12 ominous swords in the burial sword case. You can make them acknowledge you as their master now and then try. But you can't try it here. If you try it here, we won't be able to withstand the evil spirit qi." Yi Xian nodded. With a point of his finger, a drop of blood entered the sword sheath. As soon as the drop of blood entered the sword sheath turned into a sword light and entered the space between his eyebrows. Boom. In an instant, a dark red aura suddenly appeared around Yi Xian. Xianxia's expression instantly changed when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly pulled Shanling back. At the same time, he withdrew an ancient black shield and placed it in front of him. In the distance, Yi Xian's eyes were closed and his body was trembling slightly. Shanling was a little worried. "Dad, will Brother Yi be all right?" Xianxia shook his head. "He possesses the insanity demon bloodline and it's extremely extraordinary. The evil spirit qi won't be able to affect him." At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the distance, suddenly raised his right hand and pressed it down slowly. Gradually, the blood-red breath around him disappeared. Xian was slightly shocked. The evil spirit qi was quite terrifying indeed. At that moment he'd almost been unable to control his emotions. Moreover, the evil spirit qi hadn't targeted him. If it had targeted him, then even he wasn't fully confident in his ability to resist it. If this thing was used in conjunction with the insanity demon energy, then it would simply be like adding wings to a tiger. Of course, he might really never wake up. Xian opened his palm and was about to test the burial sword case. Right at this moment, Xianxia hurriedly said, "You can't use it here." Xian looked at Xianxia. Xianxia said in a deep voice, "Once this item is unleashed, this place will immediately turn into an azura field of purgatory. This chapter isn't over. Please continue to the next page. All godly objects have their own consciousness. If they feel offended, they'll attack you." Xian smiled sheepishly. All right. He realized that these godly objects weren't simple. If they were to attack him at the same time, he might not be able to withstand it. Xianxia smiled. Let's go to the next level. Xian was a little curious. Uncle, how many levels does this land spirit's treasure have? Xianxia replied, a total of 5 levels. The further we go, the better the treasures. Xian nodded. He was looking forward to it even more. Very quickly, the 3 of them arrived at the 3rd level. In the 3rd level, there were only over 30 dark golden light pillars. Another half was gone. At this moment, Xian suddenly stopped. He turned to look at a light pillar on his right. In that light pillar there was a long spear. The body of the spear was completely dark, but the tip of the spear was as red as blood. Xian walked to the front of the light pillar. Xianxia suddenly said, "This spear is called Ling Tian. The body of the spear is made of celestial star metal. Contains an endless amount of celestial star energy. If you stand in the galaxy, this spear can gather the qi and power of the galaxy and universe. The tip of this spear is made of the power of the Earth's lava. If you stand on the ground, you can gather the power of the Earth and the lava deep in the ground. If a spear master uses this spear and stands on the ground, his combat power will increase by at least 50%. If he stands in the galaxy, his combat power will increase by at least 60% to 70%. Xian immediately said, "Uncle, I want this." Xianxia glanced at Xian and said with a smile, "Are you taking it for a woman?" Xian smiled. "Yes." At the side, Shanling suddenly smiled mischievously. "Brother Yi, how many women do you have?" Xian smiled embarrassedly. "Not many, just a dozen." "A dozen?" Xianxia's expression froze. Shanling gave Xian a thumbs up. "Awesome." Xian laughed. He looked at Xianxia and said, "Uncle, thank you." Xianxia nodded. He silently chanted an incantation. Soon the light pillar disappeared and the spear flew to Xian. Xian grasped the long spear. The moment he held the spear, he felt an extremely powerful force. What a good spear. Xian sized up the spear. It was the most suitable spear for Xianxia. Xianxia smiled. "There's something here that's perfect for you. Come with me." As he spoke, he led Xian to the right. The 3 of them walked to a corner. There was a light pillar there, but there was nothing in it. Xian turned to look at Xianxia. Xianxia smiled. "Feel it." Xian nodded. His divine sense enveloped the light pillar. However, he still could not feel anything. A hint of surprise flashed across Xian's eyes. "Uncle, this is?" Xianxia smiled. "Invisible armor." Xian was curious. "Invisible armor?" Xianxia nodded. "It can make you invisible and hide your aura. Of course, it's not just simple invisibility. Don't underestimate this armor. Although it's not big, it contains hundreds of millions of runes. These runes are different, but they're closely related. If you activate it, the hundreds of millions of runes will circulate on their own. It will produce a very special and mysterious power. This power can allow you to escape from the universe and enter a very mysterious state. In other words, after escaping from the universe, you'll enter a new world." Xian frowned. "Escape from the universe? A new world?" Xianxia nodded. "A very mysterious state. It's in the universe but not in the universe. That blacksmith once wanted to study that kind of world. If he could, this treasure would most likely surpass the legendary grade. Unfortunately, he died before he could study it." Xian was speechless. "Xianxia, this chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page." Looking at the light pillar, he sighed. What a pity. If he could study that mysterious world, this invisible armor would definitely surpass the legendary grade. As he spoke, he silently chanted an incantation. Soon the light pillar disappeared. Zhou Xian quickly pointed with his finger. A drop of blood flew out. The next moment Zhou Xian's body suddenly trembled. Soon he realized that there was a mysterious thing in his body. Invisible armor. With a thought, Zhou Xian disappeared from where he was. The moment he disappeared outside the hall, the left and right elders frowned at the same time. The two of them looked at each other. The right elder said in a deep voice, Xianxia actually gave that to him too. The left elder smiled. It's all right. The right elder glanced at the left elder. You're so generous. The left elder said calmly, Old Yu, his father saved the Earth Spirit clan back then. However, he didn't want a single divine item. Not only that, he even left a wisp of sword qi in the Earth Spirit clan. That made the beastmen dare not invade us for nearly 40,000 years. As he spoke, he looked at the right elder. Even if we give that god of war armor to him, he won't even look at it. Do you understand what I mean? The right elder said in a deep voice, I understand what you mean. Even if we want to curry favor with such a powerful person, we don't have the right and ability. Because in his eyes, all the treasures of the Earth Spirit clan are no different from *T. The left elder nodded. The reason why he helped the Earth Spirit clan back then was not because of our treasures, but because of Xianxia. As he spoke, he sighed in his heart. Xianxia was not qualified to be the clan leader because his forging skills were really mediocre in the Earth Spirit clan. However, when the Earth Spirit clan was in danger of being exterminated, he brought someone with him. It was the man in green. Nobody knew how Xianxia became friends with the man in green. They only knew that they called each other brothers. Because of this relationship, the Earth Spirit clan would know who to appoint as the clan leader even if they had toes. At that moment, the left elder said, that senior's rank is too high. We can't befriend him. However, his son is different. He brought his son to the Earth Spirit clan. Obviously, he hopes that we can take care of him. In this situation, if we take care of this little guy, isn't it the same as befriending him? Moreover, this little guy is extremely talented. He might become a powerful person like his father in the future. Since we're generous to him today, he'll definitely be generous to us in the future. The right elder nodded. I'm not reluctant to. I forget it. As long as he doesn't take the God of War armor. The left elder nodded. In the Earth Spirit treasure vault. At that moment, Zhou Xian had entered a strange world. This world was very strange because he felt that he was no longer in the universe. However, he could not tell where he was. At that moment, Zhou Xian was extremely shocked. This was because he realized that everything in front of him was transparent. There were no obstacles in front of him. Everything was exposed to him. Right now it was like he was in the perspective of a god. In front of him, everything in front of him was transparent. Zhou Xian looked up. At the end of the horizon he saw some light sources. They did not belong to the universe outside. Just as Zhou Xian was about to investigate, Xiao Ta's voice was suddenly heard. Young master, you must not leave this place. P.S. Let me tell you a piece of good news. The Only Sword has published a comic. You can download the Read Comics app and search for The Only Sword to see it. Has also been drawn. End of this chapter. Chapter 1602. Hearing Xiao Ta's words, Zhou Xian was confused. Why? Xiao Ta said in a low voice, Young master, it's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Zhou Xian was confused. Why? Xiao Ta said in a low voice, Young master, I don't know either. I only know that there are some very special existences around. They haven't discovered you yet, but if you move, they will be able to discover you. Zhou Xian asked in a low voice, Are they very strong? Xiao Ta hesitated for a while, then said, Very strong. It's definitely not something that you can fight against right now. Zhou Xian was silent for a long time, then asked, If my father is here, will he be in danger? Xiao Ta immediately said, No. Also, master seems to have been here before. Zhou Xian was confused. Then why don't you know this place? Xiao Ta smiled. I went to play with Xiao Bai and the others. I didn't come with master. Zhou Xian was speechless. Tiny Pagoda continued, Young lord, you must not take any risks. Even though I'm not very good at fighting, I know which places are dangerous. This place is extremely, extremely dangerous, and its degree of danger is even above that calamity. Xian looked up, and in that unknown area, there were some white dots of light. Of course, what he saw from here was a white dot of light, but if he walked closer it would definitely not be a dot but a huge circle. Because those white dots were very, very far away from him. Xian did not choose to take the risk. Although he had reached the mortal breaking realm, he had not reached the level where he could do whatever he wanted. Xian returned to reality with a thought. Seeing Xian appear, Mountain Qiu immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly said, "My dear nephew, you must be careful. The blacksmith who made this armor left a message. You must never give this armor to anyone." At this time Shanling suddenly said, "Then father, why did you give this to brother Yi?" Shan Qiu stared at Shanling. "Because your brother Yi is one of us." Xian's heart warmed when he heard that. Shanling giggled. She glanced at Xian and said nothing. Shan Qiu looked at Xian and said seriously, "Nephew, the blacksmith said that the mysterious world is very special. If you enter it, you must not wander around because it might not be a world that belongs to us." Xian nodded. "I understand. Don't worry, uncle. I won't mess around." Shan Qiu nodded. "That's good." As he spoke, he looked around and said with a smile, "Nephew, now that you have 5 divine items, there are still 5 more. What type do you want?" Xian thought for a moment before he said, "I'm running for my life." Based on his many years of experience, he felt that it was more important to have a few more pieces of life-saving equipment. He was running for his life. Shan Qiu laughed. "Just nice." As he spoke, he brought Xian to a dark golden pillar of light. Within the pillar of light was a pair of boots. Xian was instantly interested. "Uncle, can I run very fast if I wear this?" Shan Qiu nodded. "Very, very fast. This pair of boots is called the space-time boots. It can travel through space at will. Its speed is indescribable." "Indescribable?" Xian hurriedly said, "Let me try." Shan Qiu smiled. "All right." As he spoke, he silently chanted an incantation. Soon, the pillar of light split open and the pair of space-time boots appeared in front of Xian. Xian hurriedly dripped his blood to make it recognize him as its owner. Soon, a brand new pair of boots appeared on Xian's feet. Xian moved his mind. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in a mountain range tens of thousands of miles away. Xian was stunned. At that moment he was really stunned. With just a thought, he actually floated tens of thousands of miles away. As if he had thought of something, he looked up. The next moment he was already in a starry sky. In the starry sky, Xian was extremely excited. If this thing was used to escape, it would be a magical item. The next moment, Xian was already back in the Earth Spirit's treasury. Xian said excitedly, "Uncle, this item seems to consume very little spiritual energy." He had used it a few times just now and it only consumed a little spiritual energy. This was a little unbelievable to him. Shan Qiu smiled. "That's normal. Because this is a perfect grade legendary item." What is perfect grade? It means that it has no flaws. In fact, there are some treasures outside that can also achieve this effect. However, the consumption is too high. With your current strength, you can only use it 5 or 6 times at most before the celestial qi in your body is depleted. However, this item is different. The consumption of celestial qi is almost negligible. In order to achieve this blacksmith spent at least 600 years researching and improving it. 600 years. Xian looked around. Every item here was a master's life's work. In fact, he was a little impressed by these masters. It was very difficult for them to spend so much time and effort on one thing. Shan Qiu said again, "Actually, under normal circumstances, these legendary items can't leave this place because their research value is too high. They are also the symbol of the Earth Spirit tribe. Not to mention outsiders, even the people of the Earth Spirit tribe can only come in and choose one if they have made a great contribution." Xian smiled. "I'm dragging down my father's fortune." Shan Qiu smiled. "Indeed. He and I are brothers. If it were up to me, I would be willing to give you the divine war armor. However, I have no choice. There are many things that I can't decide on my own." Xian nodded. "I understand. Uncle has taken good care of me." "Oh right. Uncle, how did you become brothers with my father?" Shan Qiu looked at Shan Qiu, his eyes filled with curiosity. In fact, the entire Earth Spirit tribe was curious. This was because Shan Qiu was a spoiled brat. He was not strong enough and his forging skills were not good. No one understood how he could become brothers with such a powerful person. Xianxia laughed. I can't tell you. I'm going to tell you. Your father will definitely mess with me in the future, huh? Yixian was speechless. Needless to say, these two definitely did not get to know each other because of something good. Xianxia smiled. Choose one more, then go to the lower level and choose 3 more. Choose one. Yixian looked around. Very quickly his gaze fell on one of the items. Yixian quickly walked to the pillar of light. Within the pillar of light there was a small knife. A flying knife. Xianxia smiled. You have a good eye. This flying knife is called God Slayer. It's 3 inches and 7 feet long and weighs 4 to 200 grams. Although it's light, its material is not simple. It's made from the world's rarest God stone of time and space source stone. It contains an endless amount of God's power of time. The wielder of the knife will be strengthened by the power of time. Most terrifyingly, this knife is one with the space. When it's used, it's unpredictable and terrifying. Yixian smiled. I want this flying knife. Xianxia nodded. All right. Very quickly Yixian obtained the flying knife. It was very light. Yixian did not drip his blood on it to bind it. Instead he kept it. Xianxia said, let's go to the next level. Yixian nodded. He already had 7 treasures. He was still looking forward to the treasures on the next level. Very quickly the 3 of them arrived at the 4th level. There were only 10 orange pillars of light on the 4th level. Xianxia smiled. The 10 legendary items are the trademark of the Earth Spirit tribe. Any one of them is enough to shake the entire universe. Yixian looked at the pillar of light closest to him on the right. Inside the pillar of light was a crystal ball. The crystal ball was slowly spinning. Xianxia smiled. The universal instrument. This ball can be said to be a map of the universe. All the known star fields and mysterious worlds in the universe are marked on it. Some unknown forbidden areas are marked on it. It can be said that this ball is equivalent to a miniaturized version of the universe. Most importantly, this ball has a teleportation function. For example, if you want to return to the 9 dimensions, all you need to do is say the word and the teleportation portal will be activated. You can use a certain amount of Xianqi to teleport through space. Of course. Yixian suddenly said, I want it. Xianxia looked at Yixian. Yixian said seriously, I want it. Although this thing couldn't be used for defense or attack, its functionality was simply too terrifying. A miniaturized version of the universe. With this thing, the entire universe became smaller. Xianxia smiled. I know you definitely want it. However, you have to listen to me first. This thing has a weakness. If the teleportation is too far away, it will consume a lot of Xianqi. If the owner does not have Xianqi to consume, and the teleportation portal is in the teleportation phase, it is very likely that the space will be distorted. In other words, the teleportation will be random. Other than that, the physical body of the user must be strong enough. This is because during the teleportation process, the speed will be very, very fast. An ordinary person's physical body will not be able to withstand that kind of power. Yixian nodded. These problems are not considered big problems. Xianxia smiled. Indeed. As he spoke, he looked at the universal instrument and said softly, that blacksmith spent almost 2,000 years to forge this thing. It was really a lifetime of hard work. As he finished speaking, he silently chanted an incantation. The pillar of light split open and the universal instrument flew in front of Yixian. Yixian immediately dripped his blood to make it recognize its owner. After the universal instrument entered the space between Yixian's eyebrows, Yixian immediately felt it. With a thought, the universal instrument appeared in his hands. In his mind, a starry sky appeared. This starry sky was like a net. There were countless universe coordinates on it. Each coordinate had a detailed description. Very quickly he found the 9-dimensional universe. Good stuff. Yixian kept the universal instrument and looked at Xianxia. He smiled. Uncle, let's look at the next one. Xianxia smiled. Alright. The 3 of them came in front of the second pillar of light. In the second pillar of light there was a ring. The ring was dark gold in color. From its appearance it looked a little ordinary. Yixian was a little curious. This is... Xianxia smiled. Divine ring. Yixian blinked. Divine ring? Xianxia nodded. Divine ring. Yixian hurriedly asked. What's its use? Xianxia smiled. It can mobilize all the elemental power in the world for its own use. Not only that, it also contains an elemental shield. It can block all elemental power. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Does the disaster blood lightning belong to the elemental power?" Xianxia shook his head. "It doesn't. That thing belongs to the supreme law. This ring can't block it. Of course, it can if it's just a simple disaster. However, if it's the disaster law itself that descends to cast the disaster, nothing can block it." Yi Xian thought for a while. Then he said, "I'll take it." Xianxia smiled. "Sure." As he spoke, he began to silently recite an incantation. Yi Xian looked behind him. There were still 8 more pillars of light. He was sure that he couldn't reject the god item in each pillar of light. Seemed like he had to think of a way to get 2 more. However, wouldn't that make him seem a little shameless? Thinking of this, Yi Xian lightly slapped his face. "Damn it, what do I want this thing for? I don't want my face anymore." Chapter 1603. Soon Yi Xian obtained the divine ring. The 3 of them walked towards the 3rd pillar of light. In the 3rd pillar of light there was a black ruler. On the surface of the black ruler there were 2 small words. Word of truth. Word of truth. Yi Xian sized it up and then looked at Xianxia. Xianxia smiled and said, "The ruler of truth is 3 feet long. It is made of the most ancient dark iron essence. It contains 7 mantras. Each mantra is a truth and each truth is a law." He then looked at Yi Xian and said, "This item is mysterious but it doesn't suit you." Yi Xian was confused and asked, "Why?" Xianxia smiled and said, "Because this ruler can only be used by a great scholar. The power of this ruler is not in its strength but in its words. One word can decide life and death. Of course, this word must be reasonable. I feel that you are not a reasonable person. So you can't use this ruler to its fullest. Most importantly, if you are unreasonable, this ruler will be useless. Moreover, if the other party is reasonable, your state of mind might be affected by this ruler." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Shanling suddenly smiled and said, "This was made by Grandpa Di Yen, right?" Xianxia nodded. Shanling smiled and said, "No wonder." Yi Xian was curious and asked, "Is Senior Di Yen still around?" Xianxia shook his head and said, "He left 1,000 years ago. However, he is a respected person in our Earth Spirit clan because he is the most knowledgeable person in our Earth Spirit clan. He knows hundreds of languages and understands the culture of close to 100 races. He left behind countless literary works that have influenced countless people in our Earth Spirit clan. Actually, apart from being a scholar, he can be ranked in the top 5 in the history of the Earth Spirit tribe in terms of one-on-one combat strength. You should know that he killed a transcending mortality realm expert from the Beastmen tribe with words." Killed with words. Yi Xian was embarrassed. This is the real all-mouthy king. Xianxia looked at the ruler of truth and said, "Let's look at the next one." Yi Xian nodded. He glanced at the ruler of truth. Although it was powerful, it was not suitable for him. Although he usually liked to be mischievous, he was not a reasonable person unless he really couldn't win. If they could beat him, who would reason with him? And among the women he liked, there didn't seem to be anyone suitable. The 3 of them arrived at the 4th pillar of light. Within the 4th pillar of light was an eye. The surface of the eye was as smooth as a mirror, and its interior was as deep as the vast starry sky. It was as if one would be sucked in just by looking at it. Yi Xian was a little curious. "This is..." Xianxia smiled. "Heaven's eye. With this eye, it can magnify your divine sense by at least 100 times, allowing you to see the heavens with a single glance. Most importantly, this eye can see through all illusions. Apart from that invisibility armor of yours, this eye can see through all illusions and concealment techniques. With this eye, you'll be in a safe state at all times, because any experts that want to get close to you will be discovered by you in advance. Other than that, this eye also has the ability to see through everything. X-ray vision." Yi Xian blinked. "This?" At this moment, Xianxia smiled. "Are you interested?" Yi Xian nodded. This was a good thing. Just as he was about to accept the heaven's eye, Xianxia suddenly said, "There are some better ones at the back. Do you want to take a look?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, "Let's take a look." Actually, he really wanted the heaven's eye. Of course, the reason he wanted it was not because it could see through things. Yi Xian was not that kind of person. He wanted the heaven's eye because it could see through concealment techniques. In that case, he would not be afraid of assassins. However, he could only ask for one more item now, so he did not want to make a decision so quickly. Perhaps there were better ones at the back. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Xianxia laughed, then said, "Come. Let me take a look at the back first." With that, he brought Yi Xian and Shanling to the 5th pillar of light. There was a dagger in the pillar of light. Xianxia did not explain but looked at Yi Xian. "This dagger is not bad, are you interested?" Yi Xian looked at the dagger and shook his head. He did not use a dagger, and among the women he liked, there was no one who used a dagger. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Uncle, do you have any armor-like treasures?" He suddenly realized that he seemed to be missing a defensive-type divine item. Although his physical body was very strong now, he still wanted a defensive-type treasure. Armor. Just as Xianxia was about to speak, Shanling suddenly said, "God of combat armor. God of combat armor is very good. God of combat armor." Hearing this, there was a slight change in Xianxia's expression, but he did not speak anymore. Shanling blinked. "Why don't we go to the next level to take a look?" Yi Xian looked at Xianxia. Xianxia was in a dilemma. Yi Xian smiled and said, "You don't need the divine warlord armor. Any defensive treasure will do. Something like that Magus armor shield will do." Shanling suddenly said, "Dad, brother Yi doesn't want it, he's just going to take a look. You're not that stingy, are you?" Yi Xian looked at Shanling. Needless to say, this little girl's main goal was the god of combat armor. Along the way, he realized that this little girl was not interested in the treasures around her at all, except for the invisible armor. Xianxia glared at Shanling. "You're the one who wants to see the god of combat armor, right?" Shanling giggled. "Dad, let's go take a look." Xianxia looked at Yi Xian and sighed. "Little fella, I can take a look, but I really can't give it to you. I don't have the right to. If I had the right, I would give it to you directly." Yi Xian smiled. "I understand. Uncle, I want to see it too. Of course, I won't be greedy." Xianxia nodded slightly. "Then let's go take a look." As he spoke, he walked in front of a stone wall and chanted a spell. Gradually, the stone wall began to tremble. Yi Xian looked at Shanling, who was full of anticipation. "You really want to see the god of combat armor?" Shanling nodded vigorously. "That's the Earth Spirit Clan's entire clan's effort to forge this armor. The complexity of it is unimaginable. If only I could take it and study it." Xianxia suddenly said, "In your dreams." Shanling pursed her lips. "These treasures should be left for our clansmen to study. That way we can better help our clansmen improve their forging skills." As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian. "Isn't that right, brother Yi?" Yi Xian was speechless. This little girl, she had a lot of tricks up her sleeves. Xianxia glared at Shanling. Shanling giggled. "All right, Dad, hurry up and open the door." Xianxia felt helpless. He quickly chanted a spell, and soon the stone wall in front of the three of them cracked open. As soon as the stone wall opened, an old man appeared in front of the three of them. The old man wore a black robe and had white hair. He looked extremely old, but his eyes were extremely sharp. Seeing the old man, Xianxia bowed slightly. "Elder Ming." This Elder Ming's seniority was even higher than the left elder and the right elder. Elder Ming glanced at Xianxia, then looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian also bowed slightly. "Greetings, Elder Ming." Elder Ming looked at Yi Xian. "Who are you?" Xianxia hurriedly said, "He's the guardian's son. Guardian god." Hearing this, Elder Ming was slightly stunned. Soon, the coldness in his eyes gradually softened. He glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. "You're young and promising." Yi Xian bowed slightly. "Elder, you're too kind." Elder Ming said, "You want to take a look at the god of war armor?" Yi Xian nodded. "I want to take a look. It's fine if it's inconvenient." Xianxia looked at Elder Ming. Elder Ming fell silent for a long time before he said, "There's nothing inconvenient about it. Come in." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Shanling gave Yi Xian a thumbs up. "Big brother Yi, you have a great reputation." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He knew that it wasn't his reputation that was great, it was his father's reputation. At the entrance to the treasure vault, the left and right elder exchanged glances. The right elder hesitated for a moment before he said, "I have a bad feeling about this." The left elder smiled. "Don't worry. That little fellow is just going to take a look. There won't be any problems. Moreover, he isn't a greedy person. So we don't have to worry." The right elder nodded slightly. "I hope so." Yi Xian and the other two followed Elder Ming forward. The last level wasn't as simple as the outside. They arrived at a passageway and there were all sorts of strange runes on both sides of the passageway. Xianxia smiled. These are all formations. If an outsider were to forcefully enter this place, over 10 million formations would be activated at the same time. It can be said that even a transcending mortality stage powerhouse would be crushed into pieces. Yi Xian felt slightly awkward when he heard this. Am I not at the transcending mortality stage? Xianxia suddenly roared with laughter. Don't think too much about it. I'm not talking about you. Yi Xian was speechless. Xianling suddenly said, Grandpa Ming, how long has it been since someone came here? Elder Ming said, over 1,000 years. Yi Xian was speechless. Over 1,000 years. This senior is really good at enduring loneliness. Xianling blinked. Grandpa Ming, aren't you bored here? Why don't I stand guard for you? Yi Xian was speechless. Xianxia glared at Xianling. What are you trying to do? Xianling giggled. I'll stand guard for Grandpa Ming. Then Grandpa Ming can go out and play. Xianxia shook his head. You little girl. Elder Ming glanced at Xianling with a hint of a smile in his eyes. Soon the three of them walked into a secret chamber. As soon as they entered the secret chamber, before anyone could react, a 7-colored light pillar exploded in front of them. The next moment, a ray of red light directly entered the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom! Yi Xian's entire body froze on the spot. Everyone was dumbfounded. At this moment, the left and right elders also entered the secret chamber. When they saw the shattered light pillar on the ground, both of them were also dumbfounded. Soon everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was also dumbfounded. What the hell just came in? Soon he found out what it was. It must be the god of war armor. The god of war armor actually ran into his body. Elder Ming and the rest looked at Yi Xian. Their expressions were no longer gentle, they were a little cold. Yi Xian looked at everyone. I don't know what's going on. Elder Ming said in a low voice. Can you make it come out? Yi Xian said, let me try. He tried to contact the god of war armor but he could not. It did not care about him at all. Yi Xian shook his head. Everyone's expression became even colder. Yi Xian was about to speak when a voice rang in his head. I want freedom. If you take me away, I will recognize you as my master. Yi Xian. The place suddenly became quiet and the atmosphere was a little tense. Elder Ming and the rest looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, Are you coming out or not? No response. Yi Xian suddenly took out a sword and pointed it at his stomach. He said angrily, Are you coming out or not? Everyone. There was still no response. Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, The Earth Spirit Tribe has treated me so well. How can I take their divine item? You forced your way into my body. Sunjas. I've let the Earth Spirit Tribe down. I'll die with you today. As he spoke, he was about to stab Yi Xian. Next to him, Xianxia hurriedly stopped him. He turned to look at Elder Ming and the others and said angrily, Are you really going to force him to his death? Elder Ming and the rest were confused. They did not do anything. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Uncle, don't stop me. Let me stab him to death. As he spoke, he was about to stab his sword down again. Xianxia quickly stopped him again. He held onto Yi Xian's hand tightly and said in a trembling voice, Nephew, don't do anything stupid. Your father saved the Earth Spirit Tribe. If you die here today, it's the same as implicating the Earth Spirit Tribe. Yi Xian said angrily, The Earth Spirit Tribe has treated me so well. How can I take your clan's divine item? If it doesn't come out today, I'll die with it. As he spoke, he suddenly stabbed his sword down. Although it was stopped, the sword still stabbed a few inches in. Seeing this, Elder Ming and the rest's expressions changed. Elder Ming said in a trembling voice, Young man, don't do anything rash. It's just an external object. It won't come out for now. We can take our time. Don't hurt yourself. Elders will also quickly said, Yes. It's just an external object. Don't do anything stupid. Elder Yu hesitated for a while and also said, Don't do anything stupid. However, Yi Xian ignored everyone's advice and continued to stab himself. Moreover, the sword stabbed deeper and deeper. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. If Xianxia had not held onto Yi Xian's hand tightly, Yi Xian would have died. Seeing this scene, Elder Ming and the others really panicked. If they were to force the son of the guardian deity to die here, it would be too unjust and unjust. Elders like them would be ridiculed by the entire Earth Spirit clan. The guardian. Back then he had saved the entire Earth Spirit tribe with his own strength. Now they had forced his son to die. Not to mention the others, even they themselves felt that this was too much. Seeing that Zhou Xian did not care and wanted to stab himself, Elder Ming quickly said, "Young man, don't do anything rash. We were going to give you the God of War armor anyway. Everyone. P.S. I look at the donations and votes every day. Then I realized that many people did not speak at all. Many readers only had records of voting and donating. They did not even have any records of speaking at all. Don't you guys complain when you read books? I read all the comments, really. A reader said that I'm the king of updates. I write at least 7 to 8 chapters a day. I'm embarrassed to say that." Chapter 1604. As soon as Elder Ming finished speaking, he was dumbfounded. What did I say? The left and right elders looked at Elder Ming in shock. It was supposed to be a gift to Zhou Xian? Was it true? The two of them were dumbfounded. Next to him, Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at Elder Ming. He wiped the blood at the corner of his mouth and then smeared it across his face. What a guy. His entire face was covered in blood. He looked pretty miserable. Zhou Xian gulped. Elder Ming. Elder Ming sighed. It's indeed a gift. Lad, don't do anything stupid. Zhou Xian looked at Xianxia. Xianxia gave him a look. Zhou Xian understood and shook his head. Oh no. This divine item is the Earth Spirit Tribe's treasure. How can I take it? I don't want it. As he spoke, he looked at his abdomen and roared, "Are you coming out or not?" There was no response. At that moment, Zhou Xian punched himself in the chest. Bang! Zhou Xian was pushed back by more than 30 meters. In the end, he hit the light wall. The entire 5th level shook violently. At the same time, Zhou Xian spat out several mouthfuls of blood. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw that. Was he so ruthless? At that moment, Zhou Xian suddenly wanted to hit his head. Xianxia stopped Zhou Xian and said with a trembling voice, "My dear nephew, what are you trying to do? The Earth Spirit Tribe is Father's best friend. If we die here, how can we explain it to Father? Father will kill us." Hearing that, Elder Ming and the other 2 elders' expressions changed. If this lad really committed suicide here, the good relationship between the Earth Spirit Tribe and the Guardian would become a bad one. Elder Ming hurriedly said, "Little fellow, we really did give that treasure to you." Elders was said quickly, "Lad, it's not worth it to kill yourself for a divine item. We let you in to see it because we wanted to give you a surprise. That war god armor was really given to him." Zhou Xian shook his head and said in a hoarse voice, "The Earth Spirit Clan has already given me 10 super divine items. No matter how thick-skinned I am, I can't accept your clan's greatest treasures." Xianxia suddenly said, "What are you saying? Aren't we family?" Family? Hearing this, everyone looked at the hill. Xianxia looked at Zhou Xian. "Nephew. My father and I are brothers and he calls me uncle. My father and the Earth Spirit Clan are family. You're treating me like an outsider." Elder Ming hurriedly nodded. Xianxia is right. We're all family. You're treating me like an outsider. Elders Wu also said, Yes, we are a family, we are a family." Elder Yu glanced at Zhou Xian, whose face was covered in blood. He hesitated and said, "A family, a family." A trace of a smile appeared on the faces of Elder Ming and the others when they heard this. Zhou Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he stood up and bowed respectfully. "I, Zhou Xian, will forever remember your kindness." Xianxia glanced at Zhou Xian with displeasure. "Didn't we say that we're a family? Don't speak like an outsider again." Elder Ming nodded. "Indeed." Zhou Xian nodded slightly. "I, Zhou Xian, will definitely not refuse if the Earth Spirit Clan needs anything in the future. This is my second home." A trace of a smile appeared on the faces of Xianxia and the others when they heard this. Meanwhile, Elder Ming suddenly said, "Xianxia, take this little fellow with you. Help him subdue the war god armor." Xianxia glanced at Elder Ming and nodded, "All right." Zhou Xian bowed slightly to Elder Ming and the others, and then he turned around and left with Xianxia. The secret room suddenly fell into silence after Zhou Xian and the other 2 had left. After a long time, Elders was said, "What do you think?" Elder Ming closed his eyes slowly. "This little fellow isn't behind this. It's the war god armor's own will." Elders Wu nodded, "Just as I guessed." Elder Ming said softly, This armor is unlike other divine artifacts. It wouldn't be willing to be trapped here. Elder Yu sighed softly. We've suffered a huge loss this time. Elder Sua smiled. No loss. Elder Yu looked at Elder Sua and Elder Sua smiled. Didn't we get an extraordinarily monstrous genius? Elder Ming nodded. Our Earth Spirit clan is mostly only interested in forging techniques. Therefore our strength is much weaker than the other clans. If we don't have powerful external help, it'll be very difficult for our Earth Spirit clan to survive freely. Elder Yu spoke abruptly. Since they're all giving us treasures, then we can totally choose the Cosmos Court. Elder Ming glanced at Elder Yu. Going to the Cosmos Court is like being a slave. What's the Guardian God's attitude towards our Earth Spirit clan? The reason he helped the Earth Spirit clan all those years ago and protected us with his sword energy wasn't because we have treasures, but because he's Xianxia's brother. The Guardian God never wanted to enslave our Earth Spirit clan. Can the Cosmos Court do that? Elder Yu hesitated for a moment and said, the Guardian God doesn't care about the treasures of our Earth Spirit clan, but his son. Elder Yu spoke abruptly. Brother Yu, I know you can't bear to do that. I can't bear to do that. 10 divine artifacts and an ultimate divine artifact. My heart is bleeding as well. However, have you thought about something? What if Xianxia isn't here one day? Elder Yu's expression instantly changed when he heard this. The reason the green-clothed man helped the Earth Spirit clan was because of Xianxia. If Xianxia was gone, would the Earth Spirit clan be able to ask the green-clothed man for help? It would probably be very difficult. Elder Yu said, actually we can't look at this completely from the perspective of benefits. The green-clothed man didn't save our Earth Spirit clan all those years ago because of his relationship with us. Since that's the case, why should we turn this relationship into a relationship of benefits? The Guardian God helped us because of his relationship with us. There's no need for us to turn it into a relationship of benefits when we help this little fellow. Xianxia treats him as his nephew, so he's an Earth Spirit clan member. Elder Ming nodded. That's right. Even though the combat god's armor is precious, can it be more important than the inheritance of our Earth Spirit clan? As he spoke, he gazed at Elder Yu. Remember, we can't be ungrateful. The Guardian God's kindness to our Earth Spirit clan can't be measured by a single combat god's armor. Also, have you ever thought of a question? Why did the patron god bring his son to us? It's because he treats us as his own. Otherwise, with his strength, would he really need our Earth Spirit clan to take care of this little fellow? Elder Yu nodded. I understand. Elder Ming nodded. Go take a look at that little fellow. It's probably quite difficult for him to subdue the combat god's armor now. Besides that, do whatever you can to help. We've already given away the combat god's armor. Don't be stingy with other things. Elder Sua smiled. Understood. Soon both of them left. Elder Ming glanced at the surroundings and shook his head with a smile. I'm free. As soon as he finished speaking, he left the secret chamber. In one of the houses, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground while Xianxia and Mountain Spirit stood before him. Xianxia spoke in a deep voice. Can you sense it? Yi Xian shook his head. He realized that the combat god's armor was actually pretending to be dead. It seemed like this fellow didn't want to submit to him. Xianxia's expression turned grim when he saw Yi Xian shaking his head. He looked at Yi Xian's abdomen. If you're willing to submit to my nephew, the Earth Spirit clan will let you regain your freedom. Otherwise, don't blame us for not holding back. The Earth Spirit clan had created it, so they naturally had a way to deal with it. There was still no reaction. Xianxia frowned. Just as he was about to speak, a voice resounded, I mean what I say. As he spoke, Yi Xian's body suddenly trembled. Yi Xian's expression changed instantly. He felt as if his body was being torn apart layer by layer. Xianxia quickly said, it's going to merge with the body and soul. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly appeared above Yi Xian's head. At the same time, there was also the soul-suppressing sword. The two gods' weapons protected Yi Xian's soul. Yi Xian's expression became ferocious. He felt as if his entire body was being torn apart. At the side, Xianxia spoke in a deep voice. Little fellow, you have to hold on. Yi Xian said ferociously, come on. I can hold on. Boom. A mysterious aura suddenly appeared around Yi Xian. Xianxia and Mountain Spirit quickly retreated. Xianxia blinked his eyes. Father, what's this? Xianxia said in a deep voice, God of War's territory. Within the territory there's endless battle intent. The more you fight, the stronger you become. Just as Xianxia was about to speak, Zhou Xian suddenly stood up. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the entire house turned into dust. Xianxia looked at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian took a deep breath and opened his palms. In an instant, a suit of armor appeared on his body. The armor was dark red in color and covered his skin like scales. However, he could not feel anything. The armor seemed to be made of flesh and blood. The armor was as if it did not exist. God of War's armor. At this moment, Xianxia suddenly said, "This armor has 6 characteristics. First, its defense. Can be said that even a powerhouse above the mortal breaking stage would not be able to hurt it. It also has the function of the God's Ring, which is to be immune to all elemental powers, including the power of the 5 elements. Second, its damage reflection. This armor has a special damage reflection function. Can reflect at least 3 times the force of the attack back to the opponent. Can be said that if you meet an opponent of the same level, you don't even need to fight. The opponent will not dare to fight you because they will kill themselves." Zhou Xian was speechless. Xianxia continued, "Third, it's the power of the God of War. Wearing this armor will allow you to obtain the power of the God of War. With the power of the God of War, your physical strength will increase by at least 5 times. It's based on your physical strength. Therefore, the stronger your physical strength, the more powerful it will be. Fourth, it's the will of the God of War. Once the will of the God of War is activated, this will increase your battle intent limitlessly. A strong battle intent can make your battle sense more sensitive. Not only your battle sense but your battle awareness will also be greatly enhanced." He paused for a moment before continuing. Number 5. The armor contains over 1,000 self-healing runes and each rune contains over 100 healing formations. Once the wearer is injured, over 100 healing formations will immediately activate and heal the wearer's body. It can be said that as long as you're not killed instantly, you're invincible. Zhou Xian was stunned. If this was combined with his immortal bloodline, Zhou Xian was excited at the thought of this. Xianxia continued, "Sixth, which is also the core of the God of War armor, is the God of War's domain. Anyone who enters the God of War's domain will have their cultivation level suppressed by 2 levels. If you encounter a mortal realm expert, your opponent's cultivation level will not be suppressed. This is because the mortal realm is beyond the cultivation level. However, the God of War's domain can weaken your opponent's strength by at least 30 to 50%. Zhou Xian was stunned. This God of War armor was simply too overpowered. Who would be able to kill him if he wore this thing? Xianxia suddenly said, "This God of War armor is the most perfect armor. It's impeccable in terms of defense and other aspects. It can be said that once you wear this armor, it'll be hard for you to die. It'll be hard for you to die." Xianxia's words were filled with pride and confidence. This armor was forged by the Xianxia tribe with all their resources. Of course he was proud and confident. Zhou Xian glanced at the armor he was wearing and could not help but grin. As if he had thought of something, Zhou Xian suddenly stood up. "That's right. I have 10 legendary artifacts and a legendary God of War armor. I'm also at the mortal realm. Do I need to be afraid of the Cosmos Court? Of course I don't. Fight the Cosmos Court. I'll do it." He looked at Xianxia and said, "Uncle, I might have to leave. I'll come back to the Earth Spirit tribe after I'm done with some matters." Xianxia hesitated for a while and passed a storage ring to Zhou Xian. There are some godly items inside. Although they are not as good as the ones in the Earth Spirit treasury, they are still of high quality. Zhou Xian did not reject it and kept the storage ring. There were some treasures in the storage ring. Just like what Xianxia said, although they were not as good as the ones in the Earth Spirit treasury, they were still of high quality. There were not many of them but more than 1,000 of them. Obviously these were not given to him by Xianxia but by the Earth Spirit tribe. Zhou Xian bowed slightly. "Thank you, uncle." Xianxia smiled. "No need to thank me. If I see my father next time, I must invite him here for a gathering." Zhou Xian smiled. "Definitely. If he doesn't come, I'll drag him here even if I have to." Xianxia laughed. "All right." After Zhou Xian said goodbye to Xianxia, he went to the galaxy. In the galaxy, Zhou Xian took out the universal apparatus and searched. Soon he found the location of the Cosmos Court. Just as Zhou Xian was about to teleport, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, are you going to fight the Cosmos Court?" Zhou Xian smiled. "Yes." Xiao Ta hesitated for a while and said, "Young master, isn't this a little impulsive?" Yi Xian waved his hand. "Don't be impulsive. Xiao Ta, think about it. Who can kill me now?" Then he raised his head and looked deep into the galaxy. "Now that I'm invincible in the human world, who else can I fight but the Cosmos Court?" Then he was about to activate the teleportation formation. Xiao Ta quickly said, "Young master, do you want to reconsider?" Yi Xian laughed. "No need to reconsider. From today onwards, there will be no more Cosmos Court in the world. Yi Xian will say it." Then he activated the teleportation formation. In the next moment he disappeared. Chapter 1605. Not long after Yi Xian vanished, the space where he stood suddenly split open. In the next moment a little girl suddenly appeared. It was the nameless little girl from the Cosmos Divine Court. She hadn't teleported here through a teleportation array. Instead she had torn open a starfield all the way here. The nameless little girl. The front of the little girl's hair was slightly long, and it covered half of her face. In her right hand was a shabby little wooden figurine, and in her left hand was a voice transmission talisman. The little girl suddenly let go of the voice transmission talisman, and Mu Xiaodao's voice came from it. Clearly, Mu Xiaodao's voice transmission to Yi Xian had been intercepted by the little girl. The little girl's expression was calm. The space in front of her suddenly split open. She was about to leave when she seemed to notice something. She suddenly raised her head and in the next moment she vanished. When she reappeared, the little girl was already deep in the starry sky. Above her head was a layer of blood-colored clouds, and within the clouds, lightning flickered. Calamity tribulation. The little girl looked at the blood-colored clouds with a cold gaze. And around her body there were actually some blood-red threads. Calamity karma threads. If Yi Xian was here he would definitely be extremely shocked. Because the little girl in front of him actually had a calamity constitution. He wasn't the only calamity constitution in the world. At this moment the blood-colored clouds suddenly condensed a bolt of blood lightning. The blood lightning flew out of the clouds and its target was the nameless little girl. The little girl suddenly vanished on the spot, and when she reappeared she was above the blood-colored clouds. Below her, the blood lightning soundlessly shattered into countless fragments, and the blood-colored clouds had also become a pile of fragments. Instant calamity tribulation. At the same time the karma threads around the little girl vanished. The calamity karma couldn't touch her. At this moment, a phantom appeared above the nameless little girl. The projection of the calamity law. The calamity law looked at the little girl and the little girl looked back at the calamity law. Neither of them spoke. The little girl's exposed left eye was filled with killing intent. After a long time the calamity law became illusory. The little girl turned and left. She lowered her head to look at the little wooden figurine in her hand. As she looked at it, a stream of clear liquid suddenly flowed out of her left eye. "Yes. They lied to me." As she spoke, her gaze gradually became vacant and her thoughts returned to the past. It was a small village and within the village there were corpses and blood everywhere. At the entrance of the village there was a little girl in a black dress curled up. The little girl was very afraid and her body continuously trembled as she cried. At this moment, an exclamation of surprise sounded from the side. "Disaster constitution?" As he spoke, a man appeared in front of the little girl. Beside the man was a little girl in white clothes. The little girl was also holding a small wooden doll in her hand. The man sized up the little girl and the little girl raised her head to look at the man. The man said softly, "It really is the body of adversity." The little girl looked at the man and the man smiled, "Don't be afraid." The little girl said with a trembling voice, "I killed them. I'm the bad guy, right?" The man shook his head. A person's good or bad isn't determined by their constitution. Although they died because of you, you had no intention of killing them. So this isn't your fault. If you're wrong, it's your past life's fault and it's also my fault. There are too many imperfections in the rules and order that I've established, and there are also too many loopholes. As a result, some powerhouses who are unwilling to give up repeatedly look for loopholes to reincarnate, and they even carry their past life's memories. As he spoke, he stretched out his right hand. "Come back with me. I'll protect you in the future." The little girl looked at the man for a long time, and then she stretched out her little hand and placed it in the man's palm. The man smiled slightly. "Let's go." The little girl nodded. Just like that, the man led the two little girls away. At this moment the man turned to look at the village and said softly, "Your deaths are truly undeserved disasters. The next life is too long, so I grant you another life." With that, the air above the village suddenly trembled. In the next moment, countless soul fragments gathered. Not long after, soul bodies appeared in the air above the village. Soon, these souls entered the corpses below, and before long the people in the village stood up one by one. The man withdrew his gaze, and then he led the two little girls towards the distance. The little girl in a white dress suddenly tilted her head as she gazed at the man, and she said, "Master, even if they're alive, they'll only be able to live for a few dozen years at most." The man rubbed the little girl's head lightly and he smiled as he said, "Dao Yi, you're the eldest, so you have to understand that even if they're only able to live for a day, that's their right, and we shouldn't deprive them of that right." The little girl called Dao Yi blinked, "But there's slaughter in many places." The man smiled, "Change it slowly." Dao Yi hesitated for a moment and then he said, "It's very difficult to change human nature." The man grinned, "Take it slowly." Dao Yi nodded slightly, "All right." Meanwhile, the little girl on the man's right suddenly gazed at the little wooden figure in Dao Yi's hand. "Can I play with it for a while?" Dao Yi blinked, "No." The little girl lowered her head slightly and didn't dare speak another word. The man smiled, "I'll carve one for you when we get back." The little girl gazed at the man, "Really?" The man roared with laughter and then he rubbed the little girl's head lightly, "Really?" The corners of the little girl's mouth curled up slightly. In next to no time, the three of them vanished into the distance. In the starry sky, the nameless little girl gazed at the little wooden figure in her hand, and tears flowed incessantly from her eyes. After a long time she gazed into the distance, "Kill him and they'll tell me where you've gone." As soon as she finished speaking, she casually waved her hand, and the space in the distance split open. Actually, it wasn't the space in front of her that had split open, but the space in tens of thousands of stellar regions had split open. The nameless little girl stepped into the split space, and then she vanished in the blink of an eye. Divine Court Stellar Region. A certain space in the starry sky suddenly split open and then a man walked out. It was none other than Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian put away the universal apparatus. He had to admit that this thing was truly abnormal. He'd only used less than an hour to teleport here from the demon domain. It was too fast. It was much faster than the teleportation array built by the Cosmos Divine Court. As if he had thought of something, Zhou Xian suddenly said softly, "Looks like I'll have to make a trip back to Qingqing when I'm free." With this thing he'd be able to return to Qingqing in just 15 minutes. After putting away the universal apparatus, Zhou Xian looked around. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of him. The middle-aged man looked at Zhou Xian. "Who are you?" Zhou Xian gazed into the distance and then said, "How do I get to the Cosmos Divine Court?" The middle-aged man frowned slightly. "You're looking for the Cosmos Divine Court?" Zhou Xian nodded, and as if he'd thought of something he looked at the middle-aged man. "Are you from the Cosmos Divine Court?" The middle-aged man looked at Zhou Xian. "Yes." As he spoke he seemed to have discovered something and his brows furrowed slightly. "You're Zhou Xian who's on the wanted list." As he finished speaking he was about to attack, but at this moment, Zhou Xian had already vanished from his original spot. The middle-aged man's head directly flew off. Heaven Final Realm. This middle-aged man was a peak Heaven Final Realm expert, but he couldn't even take a single sword. In the distance Zhou Xian kept his sword and shook his head. "Too weak." As he finished speaking he left confidently. Zhou Xian walked into the distance and not long later an old man appeared in front of him. Just as the old man was about to speak, Zhou Xian disappeared from his original spot once more. Before the old man could react, his forehead was pierced by a sword. Behind the old man Zhou Xian kept his sword and shook his head. "This is the Cosmos Divine Court?" As he finished speaking he rode on his sword and disappeared into the distance. Actually he didn't use any external items at all. Even if he didn't use any god items, his sword wasn't something that Heaven Final Realm experts could block. One could say that if they fought normally, even Mu Xiaodao wouldn't be able to beat him. Not long later Zhou Xian saw an island and on that island he saw a giant palace. Cosmos Divine Court. Just as Zhou Xian was about to walk over, an illusion suddenly appeared in front of him. Just as the illusion was about to speak, Zhou Xian raised his sword. That illusion was directly slashed into pieces. Yi Xian glanced coldly at the shadow that had been chopped into pieces. I'm here to kill people today. Let's cut the crap. As he finished speaking, he suddenly rode on his sword and very soon, he appeared in front of the Cosmos Divine Court's hall. Looking at the Cosmos Divine Court, Yi Xian suddenly pulled out his sword and pointed it at the hall. I am Yi Xian. Cosmos Divine Court, is there anyone who dares to fight me? Yi Xian. His voice was like thunder, reverberating through the entire starry sky. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared not far away from Yi Xian. God official. The god official glanced at Yi Xian. I really didn't expect you to come here. You've really surprised me. Yi Xian roared with laughter and was about to speak when some mysterious experts appeared in the surroundings. The weakest amongst them was at the mortal realm. Behind the god official there were two more experts. One held a saber, the other a sword. Black and white saint emissaries. Besides them, the undying old man was there as well. Moreover, the god undead monarch had appeared not far behind Yi Xian. Ma Yi was there as well. Seventh swordsman, whose body had been shattered by the green-clothed man, was present as well. Moreover, her body had recovered. At this moment, the legendary master Yen Xiaoxiao had appeared as well. Her eyes were filled with curiosity as she looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was slightly stunned by the scene before him, because he noticed that there were over 10 mortal realm experts, and the weakest amongst them was at the peak of the heavenly might realm. There were quite a few at the mortal realm as well. At this moment, Mu Xiaodao suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian. What are you doing here? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, I'm here to destroy the Cosmos God Court. Mu Xiaodao blinked. Your brother and father are here too? Yi Xian shook his head. Mu Xiaodao asked again, is the plain-dressed woman here? Yi Xian shook his head again. Mu Xiaodao asked, did you come alone? Yi Xian nodded. Mu Xiaodao immediately gave him a thumbs up. You've got guts. Yi Xian asked softly, is it too late for me to leave now? Mu Xiaodao blinked and smiled mischievously. What do you think? Xiaota suddenly said, young master, why don't you surrender? The Milky Way galaxy is particular about not killing those who surrender. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. A reader told me that I can stop updating for 5 days and then release 10 chapters at once. This way I can realize my bragging. Moreover, I can release 10 chapters at once without missing chapters. It's the best of both worlds. I thought about it for a whole night and I felt that there was nothing wrong with him. I'm going to give him 2 sets of physical books. One was the Sword Domain and the other was the Supreme One. Chapter 1606. If he surrendered, then he wouldn't be killed. Yi Xian's face darkened. If he surrendered, then he would probably be dismembered. Mu Xiaodao suddenly asked, really came alone? Yi Xian nodded, yes. He came alone. Everyone's expressions instantly became weird when they heard Yi Xian. This fellow came to destroy the Cosmos Court by himself. Everyone thought that they'd heard wrongly. Yi Xian looked at Mu Xiaodao. There are so many people in the Cosmos Court? Mu Xiaodao spoke indifferently, only a portion of them. Some haven't shown themselves and are hiding in the dark. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, what should I do now? Mu Xiaodao blinked. What's your objective? Yi Xian said, to destroy the Cosmos Court. Mu Xiaodao smiled. I want to watch you perform. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Mu Xiaodao continued, didn't you receive my voice transmission? Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. What voice transmission? Mu Xiaodao pondered deeply for a moment before shaking her head and smiling, nothing. As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian. Since you're here, then let's perform. As soon as she finished speaking, she was about to leave. Yi Xian suddenly said, Xiaodao, I'll give you something. Do you want it? No. Before Mu Xiaodao could speak, Ma Yi suddenly walked to Mu Xiaodao's side. She looked at Yi Xian coldly. Can you get this straight? We are mortal enemies. Are you trying to instigate us to defect by giving us something? Yi Xian glanced at Lini and smiled. Miss Lini, nice to meet you. Lini looked coldly at Yi Xian. What's nice about it? I'm not familiar with you. Yi Xian chuckled and then he looked at Mu Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao blinked. What is it? Yi Xian opened his palm and a flying knife appeared within it. Mu Xiaodao's eyes instantly lit up when he saw this flying dagger. A legendary divine artifact. Furthermore, it's perfect grade. Ma Yi glanced at the flying dagger, wanting to say something but hesitating. Such playthings were rare even in the Cosmos God Court. How did this guy get it? Yi Xian chuckled. I risked my life for this. Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian. Use your life? Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, I almost died in order to obtain this flying dagger. Really? Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian. Why did you give it to me? I've been trying to kill you. Yi Xian was about to speak when Ma Yi suddenly said, Don't even think about instigating little knife to defect. She won't be with you. Yi Xian laughed. If I like it, I'll give it to you. There's no other reason. After speaking, he looked at the god official and the others and smiled. To be honest, I, Yi Xian, came here today to destroy the Cosmos God Court. Destroy the Cosmos God Court. Everyone looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. The god official shook his head. Your joke is not funny at all. Yi Xian pointed his sword at the god official. God official, I heard that you are the number 2 of the Cosmos God Court. I challenge you. Challenge the god official. All the spectators shook their heads. God official. He had reached the peak of the mortal-breaking realm tens of thousands of years ago. It was even rumored that he had surpassed the mortal-breaking realm. As for Yi Xian, no matter how strong he was, how strong could he be? It could be said that he didn't even have the qualifications to challenge the god official. At this moment, a black-clothed man suddenly said, You don't have the qualifications to challenge the god official. Let me play with you. Yi Xian suddenly pulled out his sword and sheathed it. This chapter is not finished. Please continue. That black-clothed man's head flew off silently. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Instant kill. Seeing this scene, the expressions of all the experts from the Cosmos God Court changed. The god official looked at Yi Xian. Mortal-breaking realm. The moment Yi Xian attacked, everyone could see the depth of his strength. Even though he wanted to, he couldn't hide it. Mortal-breaking realm. If Yi Xian wasn't worth their attention before, it was different now. Mortal-breaking realm. Even in the Cosmos God Court, experts of this level were rare. Mu Xiaodao and the hemp-clothed women were extremely shocked. Especially Mu Xiaodao. She didn't expect that this guy had actually broken through. How did he break through? Mu Xiaodao was confused. Didn't this mean that she couldn't bully this guy in the future? Yi Xian smiled. God official, if you think that I'm not qualified to fight you one-on-one, that's fine too. As he said this, he pointed his sword at the Yin-Yang envoy. Let's fight one-on-one. Swordsman versus swordsman. Swordsman versus swordsman. Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian with a weird expression. This guy was up to no good again. Because she knew that Yi Xian's body was very special. He was immune to swords. The god official knew this too. He looked at Yi Xian. Your body is special. At this moment, the Yang envoy with the sword said, I accept your challenge. The god official frowned. He turned to look at the Yang envoy. He shook his head and transmitted his voice. This person's body is special. He is immune to all swords and sword qi. You will be at a disadvantage if you fight him. The swordsman looked calm. Let's try. As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. Attack. Yi Xian didn't waste any time. He attacked. Life and death sword. He used his full strength in his first attack. In the distance, the swordsman also attacked the moment Yi Xian attacked. There was no sword qi, no sword light, and no sword intent. It was an ordinary sword attack. One attacked like a tiger pouncing on its prey. The other attacked like a quiet virgin. Their swordsmanship styles were completely different. However, neither of them chose to retreat. Instead, they chose to face each other head-on. Bang! A wave of sword light suddenly erupted in the field, and Yi Xian returned to his original position. The swordsman didn't move. Obviously, in this confrontation, Yi Xian was at a disadvantage. This was normal. After all, he had just reached the transcending mortality realm. The swordsman had reached the transcending mortality realm tens of thousands of years ago. After repelling Yi Xian with one sword strike, the sword cultivator suddenly disappeared from where he stood. The space in front of Yi Xian suddenly tore open. Yi Xian calmly blocked with his sword. Bang! The sword in Yi Xian's hand shook violently. He retreated hundreds of meters. Before he could stop, another sword attack came. Yi Xian's eyes suddenly shrank. A trace of panic appeared on his face. Just when everyone thought that Yi Xian was going to block, Yi Xian didn't block. He allowed the swordsman's sword to stab into his chest. Yi Xian was stabbed by the sword. However, the swordsman returned to his original position. At this moment his right arm was gone. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the experts from the Cosmos God Court changed. This was because they realized that Zhou Xian was really fine. He had directly absorbed the swordsman's sword. He could absorb swords. The expressions of the experts from the Cosmos God Court instantly turned weird. What kind of physique was this guy? Zhou Xian took in a deep breath. That absorption just now was too. If this chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Awesome. The stronger the swordsman's sword, the more awesome it would be to absorb it. Of course, it wouldn't be on the level of his father. Absorbing a sword of that level would be awesome. From afar, the swordsman looked at Zhou Xian. What a unique physique. Zhou Xian looked at the swordsman and smiled. Again? The swordsman shook his head. I'm not your match. After saying that, he retreated to the side. At this moment, the lady with the blade suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian. She looked at Zhou Xian and without any nonsense she raised her hand and slashed. This slash was as fast as lightning. Before Zhou Xian could see it clearly, a blade light had already slashed in front of him. Zhou Xian reacted quickly. He raised his sword horizontally to block the attack. Boom. Zhou Xian instantly retreated a few hundred meters away. Before he could stop, a blade slashed down from above his head. Zhou Xian did not continue to dodge this slash. Instead he stabbed out with his sword. He was going to perish together with the enemy. However, the underworld emissary did not choose to perish together with Zhou Xian. She tilted her blade and swept it out. Boom. Zhou Xian's sword was directly slashed apart. Following that, she took the opportunity to slash towards Zhou Xian's face. Two slashes were connected in one go. Zhou Xian still did not choose to block. This lady's blade was too fierce. If he chose to defend, he would forever be in a passive position. However, he did not use any external objects. At the instant when the lady's blade slashed towards his head, he suddenly released his right hand. His sword suddenly flew out and stabbed towards the back of the lady's neck at an extremely strange angle. Heart sword and instant kill sword. The speed of this sword was not any slower than the lady's blade. Moreover, it was a method of perishing together. If the lady's blade slashed down, she would be able to hit Zhou Xian. However, she would also be stabbed by Zhou Xian's sword. The lady still did not choose to perish together with Zhou Xian because she knew that Zhou Xian's body was strong. Zhou Xian might be able to withstand her blade, but she would definitely not be able to withstand Zhou Xian's sword. The lady immediately withdrew her blade and blocked. Boom. Zhou Xian's flying sword was directly blocked. However, in the next moment the sword returned to Zhou Xian's hand. Zhou Xian was about to attack when the lady took a big step forward and slashed with her blade with both hands. Sky Splitter. As the blade descended, the sky split. In the face of this terrifying blade, Zhou Xian still did not choose to retreat. Instead, he slashed forward with his sword. This sword strike was like a mountain torrent, and the heavens and the earth could not bear it. Sword force. This was the force that he had comprehended when he faced the divine official. A sword strike regardless of life or death. Bang. The space in front of Zhou Xian and the lady suddenly exploded apart. Both of them retreated explosively while the space around them collapsed inch by inch. In the distance, Xiao suddenly spoke softly, "Recover." As soon as her voice resounded, the space in the surroundings returned to normal. Meanwhile, countless rays of light from swords and blades suddenly appeared in the distance, and the space that had recovered shattered once more. A short while later, Zhou Xian and the lady separated. After Zhou Xian stopped, he opened his right hand and a sword appeared in his grasp. The heart sword. In the distance, the lady held the blade in her right hand and pointed it diagonally downwards. She gazed coldly at Zhou Xian while her eyes were filled with boundless battle intent. Zhou Xian was just about to attack again when the divine official suddenly said, "That's enough." Zhou Xian gazed at the divine official, and the divine official gazed at Zhou Xian. "The one-on-one round is over. Now we're going to gang up on each other." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and then over a dozen afterimages suddenly charged at Zhou Xian. "Gang up on each other." Zhou Xian's face sank. "All of you are really shameless. You're actually ganging up on each other." The divine official remained expressionless. "You can call for help as well." Zhou Xian fell silent. "Who am I calling for help?" Right at this moment, a voice suddenly came from afar. "I heard that all of you want to gang up on each other?" End of this chapter. Chapter 1607. As soon as the voice resounded, a woman walked over slowly from afar. Everyone looked at the woman. She wore battle armor and held a large saber in her hand. Zhou Xian was slightly stunned when he saw her because he didn't know her. Who is she? The woman walked over to Zhou Xian's side, sized Zhou Xian up and smiled. You came alone? Zhou Xian nodded. The woman roared with laughter and gave him a thumbs up. As expected of a descendant of my Yang clan. You've got guts. Zhou Xian blinked. Yang clan. The woman nodded. As she spoke, she opened her palm and a strand of bloodline energy appeared on her hand. Mad demon energy. Zhou Xian was slightly shocked because he noticed that this woman possessed mad demon energy as well. However, it was slightly different from his. Zhou Xian looked at the woman. You are. The woman blinked. You should call me ancestor. Ancestor. Zhou Xian was speechless. The woman roared with laughter. Do you believe me now? Zhou Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Are you here to help me fight? The woman waved the saber in her hand and smiled. What do you think? Zhou Xian immediately bowed respectfully. Greetings, ancestor. Everyone was speechless. The woman was slightly stunned, but she suddenly roared with laughter in the next moment. Just as Miss Ding said, this little fellow is much easier to talk to than his father. It's entirely possible to make this little fellow acknowledge his ancestors and return to his clan. The woman was in a great mood when she thought up to here. She turned around to look at the divine official and the others, and a smile arose on the corners of her mouth. Little fellow, take good care of yourself. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly took a large step forward and slashed her saber at the divine official. The starry sky changed color as soon as the saber was swung. The divine official's expression also became solemn at this moment. He didn't dare to be careless and his figure flashed backward, retreating several hundred meters away. However, the saber didn't strike empty air, and it still fell straight down from the top of his head. This saber pierced through space directly. It was impossible to dodge. The divine official suddenly clenched his right hand. Heaven and earth protect me. An illusory shield appeared above him. Boom. The saber fell and the illusory shield shattered. The god official retreated thousands of feet, and the space in front of him and the woman had already turned into nothingness. Under this saber nothing could survive. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings had become solemn when they witnessed this scene. Forcing back a heavenly official with a single saber strike, one had to admit that his strength was terrifying. Zhou Xian was also a little surprised. The strength of his cheap ancestor was a little terrifying. He had probably reached the peak of the breaking mortality stage. In the distance, the divine official coldly looked at the woman. He opened his palm and suddenly clenched it. An invisible force suddenly enveloped the woman, and the woman slashed forward. One saber to break all laws. The moment she brandished the saber, she rushed out. Like a hot knife through butter. The power in front of the god official was directly shattered. At the same time, the woman appeared in front of the god official and slashed down with her saber. The god official's eyes narrowed and a cold light flashed in them. The moment the large blade descended, he punched out. Bang! The ray of light didn't shatter, but space itself was shattered into countless pieces. The god official retreated once more, and the woman pressed forward and slashed down with her saber once more. This strike was like a bolt of lightning and the starry sky couldn't endure it. At the instant the saber descended, the starry sky and the surroundings started to crack apart layer by layer. However, the god official's expression was extremely calm. At the instant the saber descended, his body suddenly became illusory, and numerous afterimages charged towards the woman. Rumble. Numerous explosions resounded incessantly. The woman's saber grew dimmer and dimmer while the afterimages of the god official grew more and more numerous. Bang! Another explosion resounded. The ray of light shattered, and the woman retreated by 300 m. After that, the god official appeared before everyone again. The woman gazed at the god official while the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and then she suddenly said, "Little fellow, take care of yourself." As soon as she finished speaking, the blood within her entire body started to boil, and her eyes gradually turned scarlet red. The energy of her bloodline. Obviously she wanted to do it for real. At the instant the energy of her bloodline was activated, her aura suddenly rose explosively. A trace of seriousness finally appeared in the god official's eyes when he witnessed this scene. He noticed that the woman had become extremely dangerous after the energy of her bloodline was activated. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly vanished on the spot, and then a ray of blood-red light flashed. His space cracked apart. The god official suddenly said, "Kill that fellow Zhou Xian." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished as well. It didn't take long for deafening explosions to resound. The entire starry sky started to tremble. "Kill that fellow Zhou Xian." Everyone gazed at Zhou Xian, and then the undying old man suddenly said, "I'll fight you." As he spoke, he was about to attack. However, the god official's voice resounded once more. "He definitely has a trump card since he dared to come to my bloodshed palace by himself. Don't fight him one-on-one. All of you attack him together. Attack him together." Zhou Xian's expression instantly became unsightly when he heard this. The undying old man suddenly vanished on the spot, and Zhou Xian suddenly stabbed with his sword. Bang! A figure retreated madly. It was none other than Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian retreated more than 10,000 feet away from the battle. The undying old man glanced at Zhou Xian and spoke indifferently, "You've just stepped into the Transcendence realm. You're still an ant." As he spoke, he was about to attack. However, a voice suddenly resounded from behind Zhou Xian. "Is that so?" Zhou Xian was overjoyed when he heard this, and he swiftly turned around to see a woman standing behind him. It was still the white-robed butcher. Tu glanced at the undying old man and then she gazed at Zhou Xian. The icy coldness in her eyes instantly transformed into tenderness. "You've attained the Transcendence realm?" Zhou Xian nodded, "Yes." Tu grinned, "Let's talk later." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked towards the undying old man while her gaze gradually turned icy cold. "My brother is an ant? Then who do you think you are?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly transformed into a ray of light and vanished. The undying old man's expression changed slightly, and he swiftly smashed his fist forward. Bang! The ray of light didn't shatter, but the undying old man was pushed 3 kilometers back. The expressions of everyone here changed when they witnessed this scene. The emissary stared fixedly at Tu while disbelief filled her eyes. The quasi-mortal destroyer. The realm above the Transcendence realm was the Mortal Destroyer realm. But this woman wasn't close to the Mortal Destroyer realm, she was at the quasi-mortal destroyer realm. Zhou Xian was quite shocked as well. He hadn't expected that Tu had actually attained the Mortal Destroyer realm. Moreover, it seemed like she hadn't just attained the Mortal Destroyer realm. Tu had actually broken through as well. Of course, this was a good thing for him. The undying old man glanced at his right hand, and there was an extremely deep injury on it. The undying old man gazed at Tu, and there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. A swordsman at the quasi-mortal destroyer realm. Suddenly, Tu pointed at the undying old man. Slash. As soon as she finished speaking, countless strands of sword energy suddenly appeared in the space around the undying old man, and they slashed down in succession. A wisp of viciousness flashed through the undying old man's eyes. He took a step forward and smashed his fist forward. Actually, it wasn't a single punch, it was countless punches. In practically an instant, the sky above the undying old man was covered in countless punches. However, those punches couldn't resist the sword energy at all, and they were ceaselessly slashed into pieces. Moreover, the undying old man was pushed back repeatedly by the sword energy. Moreover, not only did the sword energy not reduce, it was increasing in number. The experts of the Cosmos Divine Court frowned when they witnessed this scene. This swordsman is extraordinarily strong. Suddenly, Tu transformed into a ray of light and vanished. The undying old man's pupils constricted, and then he suddenly swept his arms horizontally before him. Bang! An expanse of light suddenly erupted, and then the undying old man was pushed 30 kilometers back. As soon as he stopped moving, blood sprayed from all over his body. He was covered in scars. On the other hand, after Tu stopped moving, she pressed her fingers together and countless strands of sword energy suddenly returned to her surroundings. The undying old man stared fixedly at Tuesday. He opened his right hand and a strand of black energy suddenly surged out from his palm. It didn't take long for the black energy to envelop his entire body, causing his figure to be concealed. No one knew what it was. Not even the experts of the Cosmos Divine Court. Right at this moment, the undying old man suddenly vanished on the spot. In an instant, countless strands of black energy surged towards Tuesday Two's face was emotionless, and she suddenly transformed into a ray of light that shot forward explosively. The black energy in the distance was instantly torn apart, but it healed in the next moment. Tu was instantly drowned. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly when he witnessed this scene, and he was just about to act when a strand of divine sense suddenly enveloped him. Yi Xian turned around and saw that it was the woman who held a saber that he'd fought earlier. At this moment she was staring fixedly at him. Yi Xian suddenly vanished. This sword strike was extremely swift, and it should be said to be abnormal, because Yi Xian had utilized one of the divine artifacts, the space-time shoes. The woman's expression changed drastically at the instant Yi Xian vanished. She didn't even have the time to react before a sword pierced through the center of her forehead. His blood sprayed. At this moment the expressions of all the experts here had changed. He was instantly killed with a single strike. All of them were slightly stunned. After all, she was a divine envoy. She was an expert at the transcendence realm as well. However, she'd actually been instantly killed by a single strike from Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yan Xiaoxiao suddenly glanced at the shoes on Yi Xian's feet. A perfect legendary rank divine artifact. A perfect legendary rank divine artifact. Everyone gazed at Yi Xian's shoes when they heard Yan Xiaoxiao, and their eyes were filled with fear. If it was just the transcendence realm, then it wouldn't be terrifying. If it was just a perfect legendary rank divine artifact, then it wouldn't be terrifying either. But if both of them were combined, then it was extraordinarily terrifying. That divine artifact was sufficient to make Yi Xian invincible among those in the same realm of cultivation. So, what cultivation realm was Yi Xian at now? It was the transcendence realm. If he was invincible among those in the same realm of cultivation, then what was there left to do? After Yi Xian killed the woman with a single strike, he turned to look at the sword-wielding man. The sword-wielding man stared at Yi Xian with fear in his eyes. He couldn't fight Yi Xian at all. Not to mention the pair of shoes. Just Yi Xian's special physique was enough to make him despair. Yi Xian glanced at everyone and shook his head. Throughout the entire divine court, there's no one who can fight me. As he spoke, he looked at the sword in his hand and shook his head again. He sighed softly. Being invincible is so painful. It's so King painful. Everyone was speechless. P.S. I was almost tricked by that reader into not updating anymore. I suddenly feel that he might be trying to harm me. Chapter 1608. Invincible. The faces of the experts of the Cosmos God Court turned extremely unsightly. Is this guy really shameless? Invincible? This guy has the nerve to say that. Not far away, Ma Yi was about to attack but was stopped by Xiao Dao. Mu Xiao Dao shook his head. You and I are no longer his match unless we use the power of law. As she said this, she felt extremely complicated. Not long ago this Yi Xian was still not her match. But now this Yi Xian's strength had far surpassed her. Even without those godly items, Yi Xian's strength was still above hers. Now Yi Xian was in the breaking mortality realm. Breaking mortality? Mu Xiaodao was extremely shocked. How did this guy reach the breaking mortality realm? Could it be that shameless people could easily break through? At the side, Ma Yi stared at Yi Xian. He's too arrogant. Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian and said softly, he has the ability to be arrogant now. The current Yi Xian was in the breaking mortality realm. Coupled with the pair of boots on his feet, he was almost invincible among those in the same realm. Especially that pair of boots, it was like cheating. At this moment, a sword hum resounded from afar. Yi Xian turned around and saw a figure retreating rapidly. It was the undying old man who was fighting with Tu. At this moment the undying old man was only left with his left arm. His entire body was covered in sword wounds as if he had been dismembered. Around Tu, sword energy crisscrossed and flew. He was completely unharmed. The undying old man lost. At the scene, countless Cosmos God Court experts had grave expressions. The undying old man actually lost to this swordsman. Mu Xiaodao glanced at Tu and felt a little surprised. How did this woman become so strong? Did this family use cheats to cultivate? From afar, Tu stared coldly at the undying old man, gaudy. As soon as she finished speaking, the sword chi around her suddenly flew out. At the same time, she herself transformed into a ray of sword light and flew out. The undying old man's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene. Right at this moment, Slaughter's sword chi suddenly slowed down. At the same time, countless strange talismans suddenly appeared in front of the undying old man, and they actually formed an enormous talisman shield. The sword arrived. Boom. The runic shield violently trembled and then became illusory. However, it had withstood Tu's sword chi and his extremely powerful attack. Tu turned to look at Yen Xiaoxiao on his right. The one who attacked was Yen Xiaoxiao, the strongest expert of the Cosmos God Court, Teacher Yen. If Yen Xiaoxiao didn't make a move, the undying old man would have been killed. The swordsman's slashing ability could be said to be the strongest among all martial artists. Tu looked at Yen Xiaoxiao and raised his sword. A ray of sword light flew out. However, the ray of sword light was blocked by a runic shield when it arrived in front of Yen Xiaoxiao. Tu walked towards Yen Xiaoxiao with his sword in hand. Yen Xiaoxiao gazed at him with a calm expression. Right at this moment, the divine official's voice resounded once more. Kill that fellow Yi Xian first. Kill Yi Xian first. Yi Xian flared up with rage when he heard this. You're killing me at the drop of a hat? Did I dig up your ancestral grave? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly transformed into a ray of light and vanished. At this moment, many people here couldn't sense Yi Xian at all because he'd utilized the spatial shuttle. Because his speed was truly too swift. On the other hand, the expression of the divine official who was in battle with Yang Busi instantly changed drastically. He swiftly turned around and punched Yang Busi, and there was a strange law character on his fist. Bang! The ray of light shattered while Yi Xian was blasted 30 kilometers away. Yi Xian was slightly dazed after he stopped moving. What was that force? At this moment his body had actually split apart and his internal organs even felt like they'd exploded apart. He was extremely uncomfortable. His powerful physical body actually crumbled in the face of this punch. Of course, he still hadn't used the war god's armor. He wanted to use it at the critical moment. Meanwhile, Mu Xiaodao's voice resounded in his mind, a law incantation. The formidable energy of the laws contained within it isn't something you can resist. Yi Xian glanced at Mu Xiaodao, yet Mu Xiaodao was looking elsewhere as if he hadn't spoken those words just now. A law incantation. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze and looked at his cracked body. Looks like I have to ask my father to leave some sort of law incantation for me when I have the time. Meanwhile, his body had returned to normal. He gazed at Tu and Tu had suddenly vanished. Yen Xiaoxiao's brows knit together slightly and then her red lips parted. It was unknown what she said, but the space around her suddenly split apart layer by layer. The space that split apart was like a mirror, and there were countless Yen Xiaoxiao and Tu within it. It was extremely strange. Yi Xian's expression became solemn when he saw this. This Yen Xiaoxiao does have some ability. Meanwhile, Mu Xiaodao's voice resounded in his mind again. This is the all-creation space, an extremely powerful technique. That swordsman is trapped within it, and he won't be able to come out in a short period of time. Hurry up and think of a way to save your life. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he spoke via voice transmission as well. Who's the most terrifying person in the divine court? Mu Xiaodao replied, a little girl killer. Yi Xian frowned slightly. A little girl killer? Mu Xiaodao said, this person's assassination ability is peerless. Be careful. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and then he asked, is he here? Mu Xiaodao replied, he went to look for you earlier. I don't know Dao. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then he asked, how terrifying is he? Mu Xiaodao replied in a low voice, he can instantly annihilate mortal realm experts. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he heard this. Damn it. What the hell? Instantly annihilate mortal realm experts? Yi Xian suddenly felt a chill run down his spine, and he hurriedly said in his heart, Xiao Ta, you have to tell me if there's any danger, understand? He knew that even though Xiao Ta was a slacker, this fellow's warning ability was very good. Xiao Ta chuckled, don't worry. With me here I'll be the first to know if any expert that poses a lethal threat to you appears within 100 meters of you. Yi Xian frowned slightly. 800 meters? What's that? Xiao Ta said, according to the Milky Way, a distance of 100 meters. Actually, I don't know either. Yi Xian's face darkened. You don't know? You're telling me that you'll be able to warn me if someone appears within 100 meters. Are you kidding me? He felt that not only was this Xiao Ta a slacker but he might also be a scammer. At this moment, more than 10 black shadows suddenly floated out from the space around Zhou Xian. In the next moment, more than 10 cold lights slashed towards him. These were the experts of the Cosmos God Court in the dark. It was obvious that they had received the order from the God official to kill him. Zhou Xian smiled coldly. With a thought, the space-time shuttle boots activated, and his entire body disappeared from the spot. However, in the next moment he returned to his original position. Around him, more than 10 bloody heads and more than 10 corpses appeared. Instant kill. With his current speed and strength, not to mention these ordinary experts, even mortal realm experts wouldn't be able to pose a threat to him, unless they had reached the level of 2 and the God official. Zhou Xian raised his head and looked at the strange space in the distance. Just as he was about to help to break that strange space, the space in front of him suddenly distorted, and a long spear pierced through the air. Zhou Xian frowned slightly. He raised his hand and slashed down with his sword, and sword light shot out. Bang! The distorted space directly shattered, and Zhou Xian retreated several hundred meters. As soon as he stopped, a white-robed man appeared in front of him, and the man smashed his spear towards him. However, at this moment Zhou Xian suddenly disappeared and reappeared behind the white-robed man. Just as he was about to attack, a strange force enveloped him, and his speed instantly slowed down. At this moment the white-robed man pulled back his spear, and this spear directly pierced the tip of Zhou Xian's sword. Bang! Zhou Xian was forced back again. After stopping, Zhou Xian didn't attack again. He looked at the white-robed man with a trace of astonishment in his eyes. The mysterious force that suppressed him was a domain. Spear domain. The white-robed man stood with a spear in one hand. He just looked at Zhou Xian with a calm expression, and there wasn't a single ripple in his eyes. Just as Zhou Xian was about to attack, another man appeared behind him. This man had shoulder-length hair and he held a folding fan in his right hand. His clothes were somewhat gaudy, and at first glance one would think that he was a woman. Both of them were in the mortal-breaking realm. Zhou Xian frowned slightly. Damn, why were there so many mortal-breaking realm cultivators in the Cosmos Divine Court? At this moment Mu Xiaodao's voice sounded again. Be careful of the 7th swordsman. He might use the power of the universal law to attack you. That power of the universal law is more than 10 times more terrifying than that of a mortal-breaking realm cultivator. Zhou Xian turned his head to look at the 7th swordsman. As expected, the 7th swordsman had already appeared on his right. He had been staring at him, and it was obvious that he wanted to attack him. However, there was still someone else. Not far above his head, the space trembled slightly, and then a man walked out. The man held a long halberd in his right hand. Another mortal-breaking realm cultivator. Zhou Xian was silent. He knew that he had underestimated the Cosmos Divine Court. In fact, not only Zhou Xian but Mu Xiaodao and the 2 women in Lini were also a little shocked. This was because they did not know the 3 mortal-breaking realm cultivators who had just appeared. At this moment Lini said in a low voice, "They must have returned from the void zone." Mu Xiaodao nodded slightly. "They must have. However, even I can't see through the Cosmos Divine Court." Lini also nodded. Strictly speaking, she and Mu Xiaodao were not considered members of the Cosmos Divine Court because they were only responsible for the universal law. Therefore they did not fully understand the true strength of the Cosmos Divine Court. Mu Xiaodao looked at the distant Zhou Xian, and no one knew what she was thinking. At this moment Lini suddenly pulled her hand. "Xiaodao, don't do anything stupid. Otherwise you will be doomed eternally." Mu Xiaodao did not speak. Lini's eyes were filled with worry. As if she had thought of something, she turned her head and looked coldly at Zhou Xian. It was all because of this B*TC. All men were bad. At this moment the white-robed man holding the spear in the distance suddenly disappeared. The next moment, a cold light suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian. The moment the white-robed man made his move, the other 2 also made their moves. 3 types of domains directly enveloped Zhou Xian. Obviously, this was the space-time shuttle boots that were used to suppress Zhou Xian. This was normal. After all, Zhou Xian's boots were too abnormal. Without the suppression of the domains, even the 3 of them would not be able to resist that speed. When he was suppressed by the 3 domains, a trace of panic suddenly appeared on Zhou Xian's face. This trace of panic was coincidentally caught by the 3 of them, and they became even more confident. Just as they rushed to Zhou Xian's side, the corners of Zhou Xian's mouth curled up slightly. The next moment, 10 Zhou Xian suddenly appeared around Zhou Xian. Doppelgangers. The moment the 10 doppelgangers appeared, the three people's expressions changed drastically. They wanted to retreat, but it was too late. Two of the doppelgangers blocked the man with the spear and the man with the halberd. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's main body and the other 8 doppelgangers drew their swords at the same time and slashed at the man holding the fan behind them. Seeing the 9 swords slashing at him, the man's pupils suddenly shrank. At this moment he could not retreat at all. He could only take it head-on. He suddenly fanned his fan and a white light burst out. However, in the next moment this white light was directly slashed into pieces. Then 9 rays of sword light pierced through his body. The man was instantly dismembered into countless pieces. Seeing this, the white-robed man and the other 2 immediately retreated, distancing themselves from Yi Xian. Looking at the 11 Yi Xians in the distance, the 2 of them had extremely serious expressions. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. The 10 doppelgangers were right beside him. At that moment he felt that even those at the mortal breaking stage were ants. Yi Xian seemed to have noticed something. He suddenly turned his head and looked at the hall on the right. There was a huge statue of a man. The man looked forward with a gentle expression. Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of the statue. Looking at the statue, he suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. It was somewhat absurd. That was because he was certain that he had never seen that man before. His gaze moved down. Below the statue there were only 2 words. God Yi. God Yi? Yi Xian blinked. The next moment he flew into a rage. You're calling me God Yi? I'm the real God Yi. As soon as he said that, he suddenly slashed down with his sword. The statue was directly slashed into pieces. Seeing that scene, Mu Xiaodao's face instantly turned pale. This idiot, why are you slashing this statue? Ma Yi looked coldly at Yi Xian. He's finished. At that moment Yi Xian realized that something was amiss. That was because many experts of the Cosmos God Court were looking at him. And those experts were looking at him with pity in their eyes. At that moment the temperature suddenly dropped. In the distance, Tu, who was fighting with Yan Xiaoxiao, seemed to feel something. He immediately turned his head and roared, "Run!" Yang Buxi also suddenly turned his head. "Little guy, quickly run!" Mu Xiaodao's voice also rang out. "Bitch, call your father out. Hurry up." Yi Xian was a little confused. He was about to run. At that moment Xiaota suddenly said, "Young master, don't panic. There's no danger. There is, I'll know. Calm down, I'm here." Before he finished speaking, a dagger suddenly drilled out from Yi Xian's chest. A stream of blood splattered. Yi Xian's entire body froze on the spot. There was only one thought in his mind. "Xiaota, I'll be a fool to believe you. You big scammer." FPW. Chapter 1609. Needless to say, Yi Xian was stunned. He didn't expect that he who had broken through to the transcendent realm wouldn't be able to fight back at all. He didn't even have the chance to take out his war god's armor. Who was it? At this moment, a little girl appeared in front of him. One side of her face was covered by her hair and only the left side of her face could be seen. At this moment the little girl was staring at him. And the little girl's dagger was still in his chest. He wasn't dead, but he couldn't move. Because he knew that if he moved he would die without a doubt. That dagger had directly locked the life force in his body. Right now he was finished. The only reason he wasn't dead was because the little girl didn't want to kill him. The little girl threw Yi Xian a cold look. Then she turned around to look at the broken statue on the ground. As she looked at it, her face gradually turned hideous. All of a sudden she roared in anger. Ah! Boom! This roar caused the entire starry sky to collapse. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn, this woman has definitely surpassed the transcendent realm. The scariest thing was that this woman was an assassin. Who could withstand this? At this moment Mu Xiaodao's voice sounded in his mind. Back then there was an internal conflict in the Cosmos God Court. The reason was that the Cosmos God Court wanted to remove this statue. Then she killed hundreds of thousands of experts from the Cosmos God Court. She even almost killed the Cosmos God Court's court lord at that time. If the laws of the cosmos hadn't stopped her, she might have killed everyone in the Cosmos God Court. Yi Xian's expression turned ugly. Damn. The Cosmos God Court wanted to remove this statue, but they were almost killed by this little girl. Now he had destroyed this statue. He didn't know if an apology could resolve this peacefully. At this moment the little girl turned to look at Yi Xian. She stared at Yi Xian. The killing intent in her eyes was the most terrifying killing intent that Yi Xian had ever seen in his life. Just this gaze alone was enough to make countless people tremble in fear. This little girl had definitely killed a lot of people. Just as the little girl was about to attack, a woman suddenly stood in front of Yi Xian. Wuku. Seeing Wuku suddenly stand in front of Yi Xian, the experts of the Cosmos God Court were stunned. What was going on? Wuku was a war king. Why was she helping Yi Xian? Yi Xian was confused when he saw Wuku. Why was this woman here? Moreover, looking at the surrounding Cosmos God Court experts, they seemed to recognize her. Could she be from the Cosmos God Court? The little girl looked at Wuku. Wuku slapped Yi Xian's shoulder, and a powerful force surged into Yi Xian's body. The little girl's dagger was directly forced out, but Yi Xian's vitality was disappearing at an extremely fast speed. The speed at which it disappeared was something that even the immortal bloodline couldn't recover. Luckily, he had Xiaota's purple gas. The purple gas, the immortal bloodline, and the self-healing ability of the war god armor saved his life. After his life was saved, Yi Xian immediately activated the war god armor. At this moment he really felt that he was in danger, so he decisively activated the war god armor. After the war god armor was activated, Yi Xian's confidence skyrocketed. At this moment he felt that he could kill gods and exterminate immortals. Yi Xian looked at the little girl and was about to attack. At this moment Wuku suddenly said, "Go. Go." Yi Xian blinked. "I can." Wuku looked at Yi Xian. "This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Go." Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment the little girl suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. In the next moment, a dagger suddenly stabbed out of his chest. Yi Xian was stunned. Where was the war god armor? The invincible war god armor? Yi Xian's mind was in a mess. He didn't expect that his war god armor would be useless. At this moment Yi Xian's mind was buzzing. As soon as the little girl attacked, Wuku disappeared as well. Boom! An explosion suddenly resounded, and in the next moment, the little girl returned to her original position. Wuku returned to his original position as well, but at this moment, there was an extremely deep knife wound on her abdomen. The little girl looked at Wuku, and the dagger that was originally stuck in Yi Xian's chest appeared in her hand again. Wuku stared at the little girl. "Go." The dagger in her hand was personally forged by you when you were the master of the universe. It can even easily tear the laws of the universe apart. It's not something that the armor you're wearing can compare to. Actually, Yi Xian wasn't dead yet because the recovery ability of the immortal bloodline, the violet aura, and the war god armor were too abnormal. Of course, it was also because Wuku stopped the little girl. Otherwise, he would be dead. At this moment, Tu's voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "Retreat first. This person isn't someone you can defeat." Yi Xian didn't think too much. He immediately activated the space-time shuttle boots and disappeared on the spot. The little girl glanced at the spot where Yi Xian disappeared and suddenly swung her knife. Hundreds of thousands of miles away, Yi Xian, who had just walked out of a certain space, had a drastic change in his expression. He turned around and slashed with his sword. Boom! The sword light shattered instantly, and Yi Xian retreated hundreds of thousands of feet away. When he stopped, the position where his war god armor's throat was already cracked. Not only was the war god armor cracked, but even his throat was torn apart. Yi Xian disappeared on the spot, and when he reappeared he was already hundreds of thousands of miles away. After stopping, Yi Xian's expression became extremely grave. That little girl was too terrifying. She was definitely an expert at the mortal destruction realm or even higher. Damn it! Why are my enemies always so much stronger than me? And this war god armor, damn it, could it be a fake? As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Xiaota, where's your warning?" Xiaota fell silent for a short moment before he said, "Young master, I can't sense her. She attacked too quickly. By the time I felt her, her dagger had already pierced into your chest. I'm very helpless as well." Yi Xian's face darkened. "I'm even more helpless." As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian turned around and looked over. Would Tu and that ancestor be in danger? Suddenly, Mu Xiaodao's voice resounded in his mind. "Leave quickly. She's gone to look for you." Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he heard this, and he hurriedly activated the space-time shuttle boots. In the next moment he vanished on the spot. However, a strand of blood sprayed onto the ground at the instant he vanished. It was naturally Yi Xian's blood. Meanwhile, a little girl appeared here. It was that nameless little girl. As soon as the little girl appeared here, Wuku appeared here as well. But in the next moment, the little girl suddenly vanished once more. Wuku's expression instantly became unsightly when she witnessed this scene, and she swiftly turned around to look over. In the next moment she'd vanished on the spot. She could only follow Yi Xian because she knew that the little girl would pursue Yi Xian until she killed Yi Xian. On the other side, Yi Xian had just appeared in an expanse of the starry sky, and the corners of his mouth curled up. This chapter isn't finished. Please keep going. A wisp of blood seeped out from his wound, and there was an extremely deep injury on his stomach. As soon as he appeared in this expanse of the starry sky, Yi Xian activated the space-time shuttle boots once more. In the next moment he vanished once more. At the instant that he vanished, the space where he stood was suddenly torn apart, and another strand of blood sprayed on the spot. Wuku had appeared here again, but the little girl wasn't here. Wuku's expression instantly turned gloomy, and she vanished once more. At a certain spatial passageway, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed drastically as he swiftly turned around, and he saw a little girl walking over slowly from the end of the passageway. She's here again. Yi Xian immediately left the spatial passageway, and he swiftly turned around and swung his sword when he appeared in an expanse of the starry sky. At this moment he'd immediately utilized the dark mirror of heaven and earth. 10 clones in his true body. 11 rays of light slashed down in a straight line, and the space in front of him was instantly torn apart. However, it only took a moment for those 12 rays of light to shatter into pieces. At the same time, a dagger suddenly stabbed his chest. Fortunately, his true body had vanished. He'd activated the space-time shuttle boots at the instant that he attacked. However, it was still too late. His chest had still been struck by a stab. The combat god's armor wasn't completely useless. At the very least, it could slow down the little girl's dagger for a moment, and it could save his life. Because if it wasn't for the combat god's armor, then the little girl's dagger would have instantly destroyed the vitality within his body. Actually, Yi Xian was extremely aggrieved at this moment. It was the combat god's armor. The Earth Spirit clan's ultimate treasure. However, it was as weak as a piece of paper before this woman. This was too tragic. He even wondered if the Earth Spirit clan had really given him a fake. Actually, the combat god's armor was even more tragic. At this moment, the spirit of the combat god's armor was extremely aggrieved as well. It had just come out, yet it had suffered a vicious beating. How tragic. What kind of immortals and demons did my master encounter? Under normal circumstances, even an expert who'd surpassed the mortal breaking stage couldn't break through its defenses with such ease. However, that woman was clearly abnormal. In the starry sky, Yi Xian surveyed his surroundings. He took out the universal apparatus and was about to perform long-distance teleportation. However, at this moment the space behind him suddenly split open. At the moment of the split, a cold light had already appeared above his head. Yi Xian's expression changed and he immediately activated the space-time boots. However, when he appeared in another part of the starry sky, his expression froze. This was because he realized that the little girl was right in front of him. She was faster than him. Yi Xian immediately activated the space-time boots again. When he appeared in an unknown part of the starry sky, the little girl was still in front of him. It was as if the two of them hadn't moved at all. The little girl just stared at Yi Xian. This time, Yi Xian didn't activate the magical shuttle boots. Instead, he activated the invisible armor. After activating the invisible armor, he directly entered an unknown world. At this moment he could see the little girl. After Yi Xian disappeared, the little girl didn't leave. She looked around as if she was looking for Yi Xian, but it seemed that she couldn't find him. Seeing this, Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the unknown world he'd entered was very special. Even the little girl couldn't find him. However, at this moment, a face suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was the little girl. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. End of this chapter. Chapter 16:10. I'm finished. That was the only thought in Yi Xian's mind at this moment. Right now he could no longer escape. Yi Xian tried hard to calm himself down. The more it was a matter of life and death, the more calm he had to be. The little girl just looked at Yi Xian and didn't make a move. Yi Xian didn't say anything either. He just looked at the little girl and the two of them looked at each other. For some reason, the little girl's gaze suddenly became slightly blank as she looked at him. At this moment, Yi Xian turned around and vanished. After returning to reality, Yi Xian activated the space-time shoes and vanished on the spot. In that unknown world, the little girl's gaze was still slightly blank. After some time, she raised her head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. She noticed some white dots of light. The little girl glanced coldly at those white dots of light, and then she vanished on the spot. In another part of the starry sky, Yi Xian had just walked out from a certain space when Wuku appeared in front of him. Wuku grabbed Yi Xian's shoulder and vanished with him. As soon as the two of them vanished, the space where they were standing was torn apart, and the little girl walked out. The little girl looked around and frowned slightly because she noticed that Yi Xian's aura had vanished. A moment later, the little girl vanished on the spot. On the other side, Yi Xian was brought to a continent by Wuku, and there was a thin screen of light around them. Yi Xian asked hurriedly, "Miss, who is that little girl?" Wuku glanced at Yi Xian, God Killer of the Cosmos Divine Court. Yi Xian asked, "Above the mortal breaking realm?" Wuku said, "At least mortal destroying realm." At least mortal destroying realm. Yi Xian fell silent. In other words, it could be above mortal destroying realm. Wuku continued, "Her dagger is called God Slaying. It was personally made for her by the first master of the Cosmos Divine Court, and it's one of the 3 exalted god weapons. Not to mention your armor, that dagger can even hurt the laws of the universe." As she spoke, she glanced at the Ares armor on Yi Xian's body. "Your armor is also insane. Even I can't break through your defense. There are no more than 5 people in this world who can break through your armor so easily, and she happens to be one of them." At this point, she seemed to have thought of something and added, "The laws of the universe are not human." Yi Xian was speechless. As they spoke, Wuku brought Yi Xian to a huge stone palace. The stone palace was dilapidated, and it was obvious that it had been here for countless years. Wuku bowed slightly towards the stone palace. "Ancestor, please show yourself." "Ancestor." Yi Xian glanced at Wuku. Just as he was about to speak, a voice suddenly rang out from the stone hall. The next moment, a white figure slowly rose from the stone palace. It was a white-robed old man. The old man was dressed in a white robe and his hair and beard were all white. He looked rather old and had an indifferent expression. The old man looked at Wuku. "What's the matter?" Wuku was about to speak when the old man suddenly looked into the distance. There, a little girl was slowly walking towards them. Seeing this little girl, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. "Damn, this woman is really fast." Wuku bowed slightly. "Ancestor, this person wants to kill me." Hearing this, the old man frowned. "I don't think she wants to kill you." After the little girl appeared, her eyes were fixed on Yi Xian. Wuku looked at the old man. "This is my husband." "Husband?" Hearing this, Yi Xian was dumbfounded. The old man's frown deepened. He looked at Yi Xian and soon his frown gradually eased. Breaking through the mortal realm. Reaching the breaking mortal realm at such a young age, not bad indeed. As he spoke, he paused and said, "What do your parents do?" Yi Xian was a little confused. "What do parents do?" He didn't know what to say. At this moment, Wuku suddenly said, "Just tell me the truth." Yi Xian thought for a while and then said, "My father is a swordsman and likes to wander around. I don't know what he does exactly." Hearing this, the old man frowned slightly. What the Wu clan needed was not a genius but a powerful foreign aid. Thinking of this, the old man looked at Wuku. "If you agree to the marriage with the Nanli clan, I will save him." Hearing this, Yi Xian's face instantly became a little ugly. So this old man was asking about his parents just now. Wuku looked at the old man. "He's good enough, isn't he?" The old man shook his head. "It doesn't matter if a person is good enough. What we need is a powerful foreign aid." Wuku looked at Yi Xian. "What does your father do?" Yi Xian was a little helpless. "I only know that he is a swordsman. Although he is alone, he is quite good at fighting." The old man looked at Yi Xian. "No matter how good a person is, what's the point? Young man, you are very good to have reached the breaking mortal realm at such a young age. Your future is limitless. But you must understand that in this world, talent and hard work aren't the only things that matter. Because a person's talent and hard work are limited. In this era, background is everything. Without a strong background, no matter how hard a person works, can he beat those second generations? because their starting point might be the end that you will never be able to reach in your lifetime. Xian was speechless. The old man continued. Young man, I won't beat around the bush. Although you are very good, your family isn't worthy of the Wu clan. Xian pulled Wu Ke's sleeve. Is the Wu clan stronger than the Cosmos God Court? Wu Ke shook his head. No. Xian looked at the old man and was speechless. Damn, so arrogant. I thought the Wu clan was a clan that could beat the Cosmos God Court like their own sons. At this moment the old man looked at Wu Ke. If you agree, I will save his life today. Wu Ke was about to speak when Xian suddenly said, I don't need it. The old man looked at Xian. You don't need it? Xian ignored the old man. He looked at Wu Ke. Little Ku, if you agree to his conditions we will no longer be friends. I Xian can lose, can die, but I will never beg others. I don't need you to sacrifice anything to save me. I really don't need it. Do you understand? Wu Ke didn't speak. The old man continued, Young man, it's not wrong to be arrogant. But... Xian suddenly looked at the little girl. Do it. The little girl looked at Xian. She didn't speak or make a move. At this moment Wu Ke looked at the old man. Ancestor, go back. The old man looked at Wu Ke. The clan will not agree to you being with her. Xian suddenly said, I want to be with her. Wu Ke looked at Xian. Xian looked at the old man. If I, Xian, don't die today, I will bring my father to the Wu clan to propose marriage. The old man looked at Xian. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to return alive. As he spoke, his body gradually became illusory and disappeared. After the old man disappeared, Xian opened his palm. A sword appeared in his hand. He looked at the little girl. What surprised him was that the little girl didn't make a move after so long. Moreover, she still showed herself. One should know that assassins who don't show themselves are the most terrifying. Wu Ke also looked at the little girl. Her expression was solemn. If it was a normal one-on-one fight, she could still handle the little girl. However, this little girl was an assassin. Once the little girl chose to assassinate her, she wouldn't be able to do anything. At this moment the little girl suddenly pointed at Xian. Xian's eyelids twitched and he instinctively wanted to escape. However, he didn't because the little girl had no intention of making a move. It should be said that the little girl had already gone easy on him many times. At this thought, Xian hesitated for a moment before he asked, Do you want to talk to me? The little girl nodded. Seeing this, Xian blinked and hurriedly nodded. Let's have a good talk. Fighting and killing is really not good. This universe should be more harmonious. As he spoke, he walked towards the little girl. Wu Ke suddenly pulled him back. Xian smiled. If she really wants to make a move, we won't be able to stop her, right? Wu Ke hesitated for a moment before he nodded. Xian walked to the little girl. He had to admit that he was still slightly panicking. This little girl is really abnormal. Xian walked to the little girl. The little girl looked at him and didn't say a word. Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, What do you want to talk about? The little girl suddenly passed a small wooden figurine in her hand to Xian. The wooden figurine looked exactly like the little girl and it was slightly shabby. Xian took the wooden figurine and sized it up. After that he looked at the little girl. Do you want me to carve a new one for you? The little girl nodded. Xian thought for a moment before he said, I'll carve a wooden figurine for you and the enmity between us will be written off. How about that? The little girl looked at Xian and didn't say a word. Xian smiled embarrassedly. I'll carve it for you first. As he spoke, he took out a wooden figurine and started carving it. Cosmos God Court. At this moment, a battle was still going on in front of the God Court. Tu and the Yang clan woman's combat strength was truly too ferocious. After the Yang clan woman activated her bloodline, she was practically suppressing the God Monarch. On the other hand, the battle between Tu and Xianxia was slightly strange. At this moment Tu was still within the myriad space and couldn't come out. However, Xianxia couldn't do anything to her. Of course, it was only a matter of time for Tu to come out. Meanwhile, the god official suddenly said, Stop the two of them. Don't let them rescue Xian. The little girl had already gone to pursue Xian. So long as the two of them were stopped, then Xian would definitely die. Once the little girl returned, the two of them would definitely die as well. So what they had to do now was to stop Tu and the Yang clan woman. Within the myriad space, Tu's expression gradually became ferocious. She knew that with Yi Xian's current strength, it was utterly impossible for him to stop the little girl. He had to go out. Tu started to swing her sword madly, and the space within the myriad space started to shatter. Forcefully break. Yan Xiaoxiao frowned slightly. She looked at the white-clothed man who held a spear in the distance. Go in. The white-clothed man nodded and directly entered the myriad space to stop two together. On the other side, the god official stopped and stared at the Yang clan woman. No one can escape her assassination. Yi Xian must die. As he spoke, he directly rushed out. In front of the stone temple, Yi Xian handed the carved wooden figurine to the little girl. The little girl looked at the new wooden figurine, and her gaze gradually became somewhat infatuated. Yi Xian was about to speak, but a stream of clear liquid suddenly flowed out of the little girl's eyes. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared not far behind the little girl. It was the undying old man. The undying old man glanced at Wu Ku. How dare you betray the bloodshed god palace? As he spoke, he looked at the little girl. Your Excellency, I'll hold this traitor back. You kill that Yi Xian. As he spoke, he was about to make his move. But at this moment, the little girl suddenly disappeared. The next moment, a dagger slashed across the undying old man's throat. The undying old man's head immediately flew off, and blood spurted out like a fountain. The undying old man was dumbfounded. What kind of operation was this? Betrayal again? Not only the undying old man, but Yi Xian and Wu Ku were also somewhat dumbfounded. At this moment, the little girl suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian. She slowly knelt down and continuously kowtowed. Yes. Rise. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Recently many people have been saying that I only update 2 times a day. I'm not convinced. Can you give me a ticket? I want to ask in a weak voice. Even one will do. Chapter 16:11. Yi Xian was dumbfounded by the little girl's sudden actions. What's going on? Just like the undying old man, he was also dumbfounded. What's this little girl doing? The little girl was still kowtowing continuously. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then he helped the little girl up. You? The little girl looked at Yi Xian. Tears were still flowing from her eyes. That's right. I can't. Yi Xian turned to look at Wu Ku. Wu Ku remained silent. He knew what was going on. The little girl must have discovered Yi Xian's identity. The relationship between the little girl and Yi Xian in his previous life was definitely not simple. Yi Xian stopped asking when he saw Wu Ku's silence. He looked at the little girl and the little girl was still saying, yes, no. As she spoke, she placed the dagger in Yi Xian's hand, and then she pulled Yi Xian's hand and placed the dagger between her brows. Obviously, she wanted Yi Xian to kill her. Yi Xian looked at the little girl who was begging for death, and he felt inexplicably complicated. He knew that if he wanted to, he could really kill the little girl at this moment. The little girl was really begging for death and she wanted him to kill her with his own hands. He didn't know why, and he didn't know why the little girl was acting like this. Perhaps she thought he was someone else. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian put down the supreme artifact in his hand, and then he smiled and said, I forgive you. Forgive. The little girl's body instantly trembled when she heard Yi Xian's words. She just looked at Yi Xian, and her tears poured down as if she had made up her mind. Yi Xian gently wiped the tears off the little girl's face and smiled, I forgive you. The little girl suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand and said hoarsely, Really? Yi Xian nodded. Really? The little girl suddenly hugged Yi Xian. She hugged Yi Xian tightly. Although she was still crying, a smile appeared on her face for the first time in over 100,000 years. Yi Xian gently patted the little girl's back, his mind still a little confused. This little girl might really have mistaken him for someone else. What he didn't understand was who the little girl thought he was. Could he be the founder of the Cosmos God Court? Thinking of this, Yi Xian turned to look at Wu Ku and sent a voice transmission. Little Ku, do you think I can impersonate the founder of the Cosmos God Court? Wu Ku's eyelids twitched but he did not speak. Yi Xian asked again, Can you? Wu Ku thought about it and nodded. Maybe we can give it a try. Yi Xian chuckled and was about to speak when he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said, Shit. Qing'er and my ancestor are still in the Cosmos God Court. Saying that, he looked at the little girl in his arms. Can you help me fight? The little girl looked up at Yi Xian. Kill? Who? Yi Xian blinked his eyes. I can kill anyone? The little girl nodded. Include me, Yi Xian. At the side, Wuxia shook his head and sighed in his heart. The Cosmos God Court is finished. Very soon the three of them disappeared. After they vanished, a woman suddenly appeared here. She wore a colorful dress and her long hair was tied into a ponytail. It was very long and it reached her butt. Moreover, her right hand was placed behind her back as she gazed towards the distance. A long time passed before she spoke softly. I'm too late. Saying that, she suddenly looked at the undying old man. At this moment, the undying old man's head was already separated from his body and his soul had dissipated. He couldn't be any more dead. The woman suddenly opened her palm and clenched it lightly. Gather. As soon as her voice resounded, the distant space suddenly trembled. In the next moment, countless crystal blue specks floated over from all directions, and they gradually condensed into a soul. The undying old man's soul. After the soul was condensed, the undying old man's eyes were filled with confusion, but they gradually became clear. When he saw the woman, his pupils constricted as if he'd noticed something, and then he slowly knelt down. The woman grinned. Go to the Cosmos Palace. The undying old man hurriedly said, yes. In next to no time the two of them vanished. The Cosmos God Court. At this moment Tu was still within the myriad space, and the white-clothed man who held a spear was standing before her. The white-clothed man stared fixedly at Tu with an extremely serious gaze. Tu's sword was too terrifying. If it wasn't for Yan Xiaoxiao's help he wouldn't be a match for Tu at all. Moreover, even with Yan Xiaoxiao's help, it would still be extremely difficult for him to fight Tu head-on. Fortunately, he and Yan Xiaoxiao were only responsible for delaying Tu's day. Right at this moment, Tu suddenly took a step forward and the sword in her hand flew out. In an instant the entire myriad space was filled with sword light that tore everything apart. The white-clothed man's expression changed drastically, and he took a step forward as well before he stabbed with his spear. At the instant his spear stabbed out, countless spear lights rained down, and in an instant the entire myriad space was covered in sword light and spear light. Rumble. The myriad space started to tremble violently while the spear lights shattered into pieces. Moreover, the space there started to crack inch by inch. Yan Xiaoxiao frowned when she witnessed this scene. She knew that the myriad space was unable to trap the swordsman any longer. Sure enough, the myriad space suddenly exploded apart and transformed into countless pieces of space. At the instant that the myriad space shattered, the white-clothed man was suddenly blasted over 3 kilometers away by a strand of sword light. He just stopped when a strand of sword light suddenly arrived in front of him. The white-clothed man's pupils constricted because it was too swift, and he was utterly unable to resist it. But right at this moment, a talisman shield appeared in front of him. Bang! The talisman shield had forcefully resisted Tu's attack. Tu opened her palm and the sword flew directly back into her hand. She turned to look at Yan Xiaoxiao and Yan Xiaoxiao looked at Tu as well. The two of them just stared at each other. Tu was just about to attack when the divine official and the Yang clan's woman in the distance suddenly stopped. The divine official glanced at Tu and the Yang clan's woman. He's probably dead. Tu turned to look at the divine official when she heard this. The divine official looked at Tu and said, no one can escape from her. Is that so? Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from the side. The divine official turned to look and saw a man walking over slowly from afar. It was Yi Xian. Wuxia was by Yi Xian's side as well. Tu's expression instantly eased up when she saw Yi Xian. Actually, she was extremely worried about Yi Xian just now because even she felt threatened by that little girl. The divine official's eyes instantly narrowed when he saw Yi Xian. In the next moment his expression changed drastically, and he suddenly pressed his palms together. Heaven and earth protect me. As soon as his voice resounded, an illusory shield appeared around him. However, a dagger had stabbed into his head the moment the shield appeared. His blood sprayed. All the experts of the Cosmos Divine Court were stunned when they witnessed this scene, including Mu Xiaodao and the others. Who killed the divine official? Meanwhile, a little girl appeared in front of the divine official, and the divine official stared fixedly at her. Why? The little girl suddenly drew her dagger and slashed. The divine official's head flew into the air. He was instantly killed. The expressions of the experts of the Cosmos Divine Court became solemn when they witnessed this scene. Oh, it was fear. Deep fear. Because it was the little girl, the god of slaughter of the cosmos divine court. After the little girl killed the divine official, she turned to look at Xiao and the others. She suddenly vanished. At this moment, a mysterious force suddenly enveloped Xiao. Xiao frowned slightly. She was about to attack when a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of her. The middle-aged man smashed his fist forward and it just happened to hit the dagger. Bang! The space in an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers collapsed at this moment. The person who attacked was the current god master of the cosmos divine court. The little girl suddenly vanished on the spot after her attack failed. The god master frowned slightly and raised his right hand to block to his right. A cold light struck the god master's right arm, causing blood to spray. In the next moment, another cold light appeared at the god master's throat, but it was blocked by a hand. Bang! The god master retreated by over 1 kilometer. As he retreated, rays of cold light flickered incessantly around him, and every single ray of cold light carried a strand of blood with it. Xiao frowned slightly when she saw this. She was just about to attack when a strand of sword energy enveloped her. Xiao fell silent. She couldn't help the god master because two would attack if she did. As for the others, they couldn't interfere at all. Because even though they were at the transcending mortality realm, they couldn't even see the little girl's shadow. Right at this moment, a tiny golden word suddenly appeared between the god master's brows. Bang! As soon as the word appeared, an expanse of golden light suddenly erupted from his body. The little girl had returned to Xian's side. At this moment, the god master's entire body was covered in scars, and there wasn't a single spot that was unharmed. The expressions of the experts of the Cosmos Divine Court became extremely solemn when they witnessed this scene. Even Tu and the woman from the Yang clan were the same. The little girl's strength was too terrifying and no one here could stop her. The god master glanced at the scars on his body, and then he shook his head slightly. After that he looked at Wu Ku. Heavenly King Wu, it's a little hard for me to understand why you would choose to stand on his side. Wu Ku glanced at Xian. You wouldn't believe me even if I told you. The god master nodded slightly and he looked at the little girl. The one that I can't understand the most is you. I really can't understand why you would help this person with the calamity body. The experts of the Cosmos Divine Court looked at the little girl. No one had expected the little girl's sudden betrayal. How did Xian do it? He actually made the most terrifying little girl of the Cosmos Divine Court betray them. The little girl looked at the god master and didn't speak. Xian suddenly said, I told you. Would you believe me? The god master looked at Xian. Tell me. Xian said seriously, actually I am the founder of the Cosmos Divine Court. The little girl beside him nodded cooperatively. The founder of the Cosmos Divine Court. The moment he said that, everyone was shocked. Beside Mu Xiaodao, Ma Yi stared at Xian. He's lying again. Mu Xiaodao said softly, what if it's true? Ma Yi turned and looked at Mu Xiaodao. How is that possible? Mu Xiaodao looked at the little girl. She worships the founder of the Cosmos Divine Court like a god and now she is following Xian. Ma Yi looked at Xian in the distance. After a while she shook her head repeatedly. Bible. Impossible. From afar the god master looked at Xian and after some time he said, I don't really believe it. However, it isn't impossible. After all, she actually chose to follow you. As he said that, he turned and looked at the Cosmos Divine Court Hall. Do you dare to test it? Xian frowned. How do I test it? The god master looked at Xian. Do you see the 12 statues in front of the Cosmos Divine Court Hall? Xian looked at the front of the Cosmos Divine Court Hall. Behind the statue of the Cosmos Divine Court's founder, there were 12 other statues. These 12 statues were holding onto spears, and they were looking at the statue of the Cosmos Divine Court Master. At this moment the God Master said, these 12 statues are the 12 guardian gods. These 12 guardian gods only listen to the orders of the first God Master. Their souls are in deep slumber, and only the first God Master can wake them up. If you can wake them up, then you will be the founder of the Cosmos Divine Court. Hearing this, Xian felt a little awkward. What the F***ck did I call out? At this moment, the little girl suddenly looked at him and nodded, indicating that he could. Xian was speechless. Little sister, I really can't do it. At this moment the God Master suddenly said, You don't dare. Yi Xian remained silent. He knew the God Master's evil intentions, but why did the little girl follow him? It was simple because she thought that he, Yi Xian, was the God Master of the Cosmos Divine Court. If he couldn't wake the 12 guardian gods, the little girl definitely wouldn't follow him. Or perhaps if he didn't dare to call out, the little girl would suspect him. The current situation was that whoever got the little girl would get to rule the world. The God Master asked again, You don't dare? Yi Xian looked at the God Master. What if I am really the founder of the universe? The God Master looked at Yi Xian. The Cosmos Divine Court will submit to you. Yi Xian remained silent. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. The little girl and Wu Ku were also looking at Yi Xian. Were they really sure that Yi Xian was the master of the Cosmos Divine Court? No. They weren't too sure either. Just based on the carving technique alone, they couldn't confirm that Yi Xian was the master of the Cosmos Divine Court. At this moment Yi Xian was in a dilemma. If he called out, he had no confidence at all. Master of the Cosmos Divine Court? That was just him making things up. Not calling out. He felt that this little girl might stab his head with a knife. If this little girl stood on the side of the Cosmos Divine Court, they wouldn't have any chance of winning. Moments later, Yi Xian took in a deep breath and walked towards the 12 statues. Damn it, there was no way out. If he tried, he might have a chance of survival. If he didn't try, he wouldn't have any chance at all. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian walked towards the 12 statues. Yi Xian looked at the 12 statues and closed his eyes slowly. At this moment, a gentle breeze blew over. In this breeze, Yi Xian seemed to hear 12 familiar voices. God Master, you are back. Chapter 16:12. Hearing this, Yi Xian shuddered. At this moment, many fragmented memories appeared in his mind. Gradually, Yi Xian became a little absent-minded, as if he had seen his past life. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. Was he the founder of the Cosmos God Court? Actually, the experts of the Cosmos God Court did not believe it. How long had the founder of the Cosmos God Court disappeared? It had been too long. Even if the founder of the Cosmos God Court had reincarnated, he should not be Yi Xian. This was because Yi Xian had the body of disaster. How could a person with the body of disaster be the founder of the Cosmos God Court? Tu looked at Yi Xian. No one knew what she was thinking. She vaguely knew what Daoist was thinking, but she was not sure. This was because she had been investigating this matter. Again, she wasn't too sure about it. On the other side, Mu Xiaodao was also looking at Yi Xian. Her expression was calmer. Actually, she did not think that Yi Xian was the founder of the Cosmos God Court. This was too ridiculous. However, if Yi Xian was not the founder of the Cosmos God Court, the little girl would not follow him. Of course, this was not the main point. The main point was, if this slut was really the founder of the Cosmos God Court, what should they do? No one knew what to do. At this moment, Yi Xian's right hand trembled slightly. At this moment he saw many scenes. On a small island, a man was leaning against a tree, his head lowered as he read a book. Not far from the man stood a little girl with a dagger in her hand. The little girl was dressed in black and held a dagger in her hand. At this moment she was waving the dagger in the air. Every time she waved the dagger, a cold light would appear. She was practicing very seriously. Occasionally, she would sneak a glance at the man who was reading under the tree. Every time she looked at the man would look back at her and smile, indicating that she was practicing well. Therefore the little girl practiced even more seriously. Under the tree, after the man retracted his gaze, he looked at the little girl in the white dress beside him. The little girl in the white dress leaned against his leg. She was also reading a book, and it was the same book as the man. Meanwhile, the little girl in a white dress suddenly said, "There's something off about second brother lately." The man smiled. "What's wrong?" The little girl in the white dress put down the book and turned to look at the man. "She's a little restless." The man rubbed her head gently and was about to speak when a voice suddenly sounded from afar. "Daoist, you're bad-mouthing me again." Not far away, a little girl in a black dress slowly walked over. The little girl was only 15 or 16 years old and her hair was very long. Her hair was casually draped behind her, but it was not messy. The little girl was very beautiful. She had sword-like eyebrows and phoenix-like eyes. Her eyes contained a maturity and coldness that did not match her age. Behind the little girl was another little girl in a red dress. The little girl in the red dress was right behind the little girl in the black dress. When she saw the man under the tree, a smile immediately appeared on her face. She wanted to go over, but she seemed to have thought of something. She glanced at the little girl in the black dress in front of her and stopped in her tracks. When the little girl in a black dress walked towards the man, she turned around and glanced at the little girl who was cultivating in the distance. "You're not suited to be an assassin." The little girl looked at the little girl in a black dress, but the little girl in a black dress had already noticed her gaze. The little girl frowned slightly and then she suddenly vanished. When she appeared again, she was in front of the little girl in a black dress. However, she hadn't even attacked when the little girl in a black dress's right hand clamped down on her throat. The little girl lifted the little girl up by force, and then she gazed coldly at the little girl. "You won't be a match for me even if you cultivate for another 10,000 years. As she spoke, she was about to toss the little girl aside. However, she seemed to have thought of something and abandoned that thought. She just placed the little girl down and walked towards the man beneath the tree. The little girl gazed at the dagger in her hand with a slight sense of loss. The little girl in a red dress glanced at the little girl in a black dress, but she didn't speak and continued following the little girl in a black dress. The little girl in a black dress walked over to the tree, and then she glanced at Dao Yi with an indifferent expression. "Dao Yi, if you're displeased with me, then be frank with me. If it's really not enough, then we can fight. Don't always speak ill of me in front of master." Dao Yi glanced at the little girl in a black dress and didn't speak. The little girl in a black dress glanced coldly at Dao Yi, and then she gazed at the man beneath the tree. The man pointed forward. "Sit." The little girl in a black dress obediently sat before the man. The man gazed at the little girl in a red dress and smiled. "Empress, you sit as well." The little girl in a red dress hurriedly nodded, and then she sat obediently by the man's side. The man gazed at the little girl in a black dress. "Ah Ming, your temper is still so bad." The little girl in a black dress lowered her head slightly. "That's me." The man shook his head. "You can leave." Ah Ming raised her head and looked at the man. She just stared at the man, and after a while she stood up and left. But after a few steps she suddenly stopped and asked, "Do you hate me?" The man looked at Ah Ming. "Do you think that I hate you?" Ah Ming nodded. "Yes." After that she quickly disappeared into the distance. Under the tree the man sighed softly. Dao Yi suddenly said, "You shouldn't have indulged her." The man gently stroked Dao Yi's little head and said softly, "All these years I've been too strict with her." As he spoke, he gazed into the distance and a trace of worry flashed across his eyes. "She's very talented and she's the most hard-working person among all of you. She can learn everything I teach her in the shortest time possible. She's really outstanding, very very outstanding, but she's a little extreme and likes to get into a dead end." Dao Yi wanted to say something but stopped. The man smiled. "I believe in her just like how I believe in you. Because you're the closest people to me." Dao Yi glanced at the man, nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. The man looked at the black-clothed little girl holding the dagger and smiled. "Little Mu, don't be discouraged, believe in yourself." The black-clothed little girl called Little Mu lowered her head slightly, and said with some uncertainty, "She's very powerful." The man smiled. "You can also become very powerful." Little Mu looked at the man. "Really?" The man nodded. "Yes." Little Mu held the dagger tightly in her hand. "I will work hard." The man chuckled and continued reading. On the other side, Ah Ming came to a piece of cloud and she took out a little wooden figurine. That little wooden figurine looked exactly like her, and as she looked at it, her eyes gradually turned cold. In the next moment she clenched her right hand and that little wooden figurine turned into powder. In front of the Cosmos God Court, Xian suddenly opened his eyes and they were a little lost. He knew that those memories just now weren't his. Xian looked at the 12 statues in front of him and said softly, "Wake up. Wake up." A moment of silence ensued, and then the ground suddenly started trembling. Everyone watched as the 12 statues suddenly cracked open, and there were 12 men within them. The 12 men opened their eyes and when they saw Xian they knelt down. "Greetings, God Lord." "Greetings, God Lord." Seeing this, all the experts of the Cosmos God Court were stunned. Ma Yi and Seventh Sword looked at Xian in disbelief and Ma Yi muttered softly, "How is this possible? How is this possible?" Mu Xiaodao looked at Xian and at this moment there was only one thought in her mind. Did the Cosmos God Court listen to the laws of the universe or the founder? In the distance, the current God Lord of the Cosmos God Court looked at Xian and he slowly closed his eyes. He had awakened the 12 guardian gods. Without a doubt, Yi Xian's identity was confirmed. He really was the founder of the Cosmos God Court. Then the question was, why did Yi Xian have the body of disaster? How did the founder of the Cosmos God Court become like this? There were too many questions. At this moment, all the experts of the Cosmos God Court were in a daze. If this guy was the founder of the Cosmos God Court, then the question was, should they fight or not? At the side, Yi Xian looked at the 12 guardian gods, and his heart was filled with complicated emotions. Could the mysterious person in my body really be the founder of the Cosmos God Court? I was bragging and it actually came true. Yi Xian couldn't help but touch his mouth. Was his mouth blessed? At this moment, the current God Lord of the Cosmos God Court suddenly looked up into the sky, and he was slightly dazed. Shouldn't the laws of the universe give us an explanation? Explanation? At this moment, a voice sounded from the side. What explanation do you want? Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. Not far away, a woman was slowly walking over. She wore a colorful dress and her hair was tied into a ponytail. Beside her there was an old man. It was the undying old man. Everyone's expression changed drastically when they saw this woman, including the little girl by Yi Xian's side. The little girl stared at the woman, and there was a trace of fear in her eyes. Tu's expression also turned solemn. Laws of the universe. However, this wasn't the main body. The woman looked at the current God Lord of the Cosmos God Court and smiled. What explanation do you want? The current God Lord of the Cosmos God Court looked at the woman. He is the founder of the Cosmos God Court. The woman smiled, and the current God Lord stared at the woman. Why did you kill him? The woman blinked. Is that something you should be asking? The God Lord stared at the woman. We want to know the truth. The woman smiled. Are you loyal to us or to the founder of the Cosmos God Court? The God Lord looked at the woman. We just want to know the truth. The woman nodded slightly. The truth is. As she spoke, she waved her jade hand. The God Lord was instantly dismembered into thousands of pieces. Instant kill. Everyone's expression changed drastically when they saw this. Instant kill, a mortal extinguisher realm expert. This was an instant kill. The woman turned and looked at the experts of the Cosmos God Court and smiled. Those who are willing to be loyal to us can stand over here. The experts of the Cosmos God Court exchanged glances with one another. Loyalty to the laws of the universe or the founder of the Cosmos God Court. Without much thought, some of the experts of the Cosmos God Court stood behind the woman. The founder of the Cosmos God Court? That was too far away from them. All along they had been loyal to the laws of the universe. However, there was one person who didn't go over. Yan Xiaoxiao. Yan Xiaoxiao looked at the woman. I also want to know the truth. The woman smiled. All right, I will tell you. As she spoke, she pointed with her fingers. In the distance, Yan Xiaoxiao's expression changed drastically. At this moment, the little girl suddenly appeared in front of her, and the little girl slashed down with her dagger. The space in front of her was ripped apart, and along with it, a mysterious power was ripped apart. The little girl turned and looked at Yi Xian. Go. Go. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned solemn. Go. The woman turned and looked at Yi Xian and her lips curled. I'm afraid you won't be able to leave today. At the side, Tu suddenly disappeared. The woman didn't attack, but a black-robed man suddenly blocked in front of Tu's Hong. Tu was immediately stopped. Suddenly, 36 black-robed men appeared in the surroundings. These 36 people were all peak mortal extinguisher realm experts. The woman looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Attack. As soon as he finished speaking, the 12 guardians in front of Yi Xian suddenly drew their spears at the same time, and their target was actually Yi Xian. 12 peak mortal extinguisher realm experts. How could Yi Xian block them? P.S. Those who are willing to vote, come over here. Chapter 16:13. No one had expected that the 12 guardians would suddenly attack Yi Xian. After all, it was Yi Xian who had awakened them. Even though no one had expected it, Yi Xian had. At the instant that the 12 of them attacked, he'd already utilized the space-time shoes to retreat over 1 kilometer away. The 12 of them missed. They were about to attack again when the woman suddenly stopped them. The woman looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I'm slightly curious. You seem to have known that they would attack you. Yi Xian looked at the woman. If I'm not wrong, then all of you should have eliminated those loyal subordinates of the founder of the Cosmos Court all those years ago. Am I right? The woman smiled. Yes. Xian fell silent. Actually, he'd been on guard against the 12 guardians since the woman appeared. If these 12 people were really loyal to the founder of the Cosmos God Court, the laws of the universe would definitely not allow them to live. There was only one explanation for them being able to live till now. That was because these 12 people were already loyal to the laws of the universe and not the founder of the Cosmos God Court. As if he'd thought of something, Xian looked at the woman. Which law are you? There was no such woman in his memories. The woman smiled. Why don't you take a guess? Xian was about to speak when the young girl suddenly said, The law of life. The law of life. Xian gazed at the woman. You're the law of life. The woman nodded. Yes. Xian fell silent for a moment before he asked, Why did all of you attack the founder of the Cosmos Court all those years ago? The woman smiled. I don't want to talk so much with you. As she spoke, she suddenly took a step forward and smashed her fist towards Xian. At the instant that the woman attacked, Tu and the woman from the Yang clan were about to attack as well. However, over 10 people blocked their path in the next moment. The young girl was the fastest, and she vanished on the spot at the instant that the woman attacked. A strand of cold light lit up in the distance. Bang! Along with an explosion, the ray of cold light shattered, but in the next moment, countless rays of cold light engulfed the law of life. At this time, Mu Xiaodao's voice suddenly sounded in Xian's mind. Let's go. Xian turned to look at Mu Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao glared at Xian. Let's go. Xian shook his head. He also wanted to leave, but he couldn't. Apart from the invincible law of life, there were also 48 mortal Terminator stage super experts present. 48. Xian looked at the black-robed men and the 12 protectors, and a sense of helplessness rose in his heart. Not only was their battle prowess suppressed, but they were also outnumbered. How were they supposed to fight? Moreover, even if he could leave, he would not. If he left, what would happen to Tu Xiaomu and the ancestors of the Yang tribe? Although the three of them were powerful, the other party was ganging up on them. Xian slowly closed his eyes. He opened his palm and a sword appeared in his hand. Behind him, a sword sheath suddenly appeared. At this time, the 12 protectors suddenly rushed towards him. 12 mortal Terminator stage experts. All of them had a higher cultivation than him. A trace of hostility flashed in Xian's eyes. He took a step forward, and the next moment the sword sheath behind him shook violently. The 12 blood-colored longswords shot into the sky. At the same time, the moment the sword sheath was activated, the surrounding space turned into azure purgatory. Endless murderous intent, anger, resentment, hostility, malice and death. Xian took a step forward and pointed his finger forward. Slash. The 12 swords fell straight down. Bang. In the lead. This chapter is not over. Please continue. One of the protectors was killed on the spot by the 12 swords. As for Xian, he also rushed out. However, the moment he rushed out, 10 clones appeared beside him. In fact, he wanted to duplicate Xiao Mu and the law of life, but it was impossible. Their strength had already exceeded the scope of the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth. Helpless, he could only duplicate his own. As he rushed towards the 12 protectors, Xian directly activated his crazy demon bloodline. Xian slashed down with his sword. Bang! One of the protectors was sent flying hundreds of meters away. However, in the next moment, a spear pierced his chest. However, it could not pierce through the God of War armor. Sensing this, Xian was overjoyed. As Wuxia said, there were really not many who could break through his God of War armor. If he could not break through the God of War armor, was he not invincible? Xian directly rushed towards one of the protectors. At this moment, another spear suddenly stabbed towards him. However, Xian did not dodge and let the spear pierce his chest. Bang! The protector with the spear was directly sent flying hundreds of meters away. After stopping, the protector with the spear looked at his cracked right hand. He was a little dumbfounded. This thing could reflect? In the distance, Xian and his 10 clones were actually suppressing the 10 protectors. Of course, there was still a huge gap between the strength of Xian's clones and those protectors. However, the combat power of his main body was really too terrifying. The main thing was that the God of War armor was terrifying. The God of War armor was useless against Xiao Mu and the law of life. However, it was extremely useful against ordinary mortal Terminators. These mortal Terminators could cause a certain amount of damage to the God of War armor, but the damage was limited. Moreover, the god of war armor had a self-healing ability, and the most terrifying thing was that it had a reflection ability. This reflection ability made those protectors want to fight, but they did not dare to fight. Moreover, there was something even more terrifying. That was Zhou Xian's self-healing ability. Although Zhou Xian's cultivation level was not as high as theirs, Zhou Xian was also at the breaking mortal realm. Especially that healing ability, Zhou Xian's immortal bloodline, and Zhou Xian's purple qi, 3 kinds of recovery ability. Zhou Xian did not defend himself at all. He would risk his life to kill anyone he saw. He could afford it, but those guardians could not. Because of this, Zhou Xian and his 10 clones were actually able to fight against 11 mortal terminators. On the other side, Ma Yi, who was next to Mu Xiaodao, suddenly said, "What should we do?" Mu Xiaodao said in a low voice, "Go." Ma Yi looked at Mu Xiaodao. "Go." Mu Xiaodao nodded. As she spoke, she pulled Lini away. She was most afraid that the protectors behind Ma Yi would let Ma Yi attack. Ma Yi's cultivation level was low, but if Ma Yi activated the power of law, it could break Zhou Xian's armor. Only the power of law could break Zhou Xian's armor. Once Zhou Xian's armor was broken, Zhou Xian would definitely not be able to fight against 11 mortal terminators. She could not help Zhou Xian because there was a universal law here. The only thing she could do was take Ma Yi away, so that Zhou Xian would be less of a threat. However, at this moment Ma Yi suddenly stopped. She turned to look at Zhou Xian in the distance. "Xiaodao, she wants me to activate the power of law." Hearing this, Mu Xiaodao's face instantly darkened. At this moment Ma Yi opened her palm. Boom. A bolt of divine lightning suddenly fell from the sky. This bolt of divine lightning landed on Ma Yi's palm. In an instant, Ma Yi's entire body was covered in lightning. Waves of powerful aura gushed out of her body, and a bolt of flame lightning condensed in her hand. The power of law. As if sensing something, Zhou Xian's face suddenly changed. He turned to look at Ma Yi. At this moment, Ma Yi suddenly spoke softly. "This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page." "Go." As soon as she finished speaking, the bolt of flame lightning in her hand transformed into a bolt of lightning that shot towards Zhou Xian. Seeing this scene, Zhou Xian frowned. His intuition told him that his armor could not block this thing. At this moment, Mu Xiaodao suddenly stood in front of him. Mu Xiaodao opened her palm, and a flying knife suddenly appeared in her hand. It was the God Slayer that Zhou Xian had given her. Mu Xiaodao suddenly took a step forward and slashed down with the knife. The flying dagger contained a mysterious power. The power of law. At this moment she also activated her power of law. Boom. Mu Xiaodao's saber directly blocked the flaming lightning bolt. However, the flaming lightning bolt did not disappear. In the distance, Ma Yi stared at Mu Xiaodao. "Do you know what you're doing?" Mu Xiaodao grinned. "I'm very clear." Ma Yi roared angrily. "You'll die." Mu Xiaodao blinked. "I'll block it for a while and then run." At this moment her body suddenly trembled. In the next moment, the mysterious power in her body started to disappear bit by bit. The power of law of the universe was disappearing. Seeing this scene, Ma Yi shouted in horror, "Xiaodao, retreat." Not far away, Zhou Xian, who was being held back, also roared. "Mu Xiaodao, I can take it myself." Mu Xiaodao glanced at Zhou Xian. "Take it my ass. This lightning will directly break your armor. Once your armor is broken, you'll be dead." As she spoke, she looked up at the starry sky. After staring at the starry sky for a long time, she softly said, "This is my choice." As soon as she finished speaking, the power of law of the universe in her body disappeared. At this moment, her flying knife could no longer block the flame lightning. Boom. Mu Xiaodao was directly forced to retreat by the powerful force. In the process of retreating, Mu Xiaodao suddenly roared angrily. She held the knife with both hands and slashed forward. God slaying. This was a slash that she put her full strength into. The knife fell. Boom. The flying knife in Mu Xiaodao's hand directly shattered into pieces. As for the flame lightning, it blasted Mu Xiaodao's body. In an instant, Mu Xiaodao's body directly exploded. Not only did her body explode, but her soul also instantly became illusory. It was as if her soul was completely destroyed. However, the flame lightning was still there. In the distance, Zhou Xian suddenly roared. "Arg!" As soon as his voice fell, the mad demon force in his body suddenly erupted. A powerful bloodline force directly forced the protectors around him to retreat. Yi Xian directly rushed in front of Mu Xiaodao's soul. He held the sword with both hands and fiercely slashed at the flame lightning. Boom! With the support of his powerful bloodline power, his sword forcefully blocked that flaming divine lightning. Yi Xian roared angrily. Little soul, Xiao, save her. The soul-suppressing sword directly appeared above Mu Xiaodao's head. A powerful soul force directly surged towards Mu Xiaodao. Xiaota also immediately released countless purple qi that surged towards Xiaota. However, Xiaota's soul also immediately became more and more transparent. Xiaota's voice trembled. Young lord, I can't. That power is too strange. I can't save her. Little soul also said with a trembling voice. Young lord, I can't protect her soul. Yi Xian's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Think of a way. At this moment Mu Xiaodao smiled slightly. There's no need to think of a way. I'm already gone. As she said that, she looked at Yi Xian and said softly, Bitch, you gave me a flying knife, I'll return your life. I don't owe you. After saying that, her soul completely disappeared. Her soul was completely destroyed. End of this chapter.